3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
From the place yet not overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Thursday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course, streaming on YouTube. 855-212-4CBS is the number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB. Got Moist Mike on the other side of the glass, along with Stuart Kovacs. We had a very nice show bonding moment and chemistry building moment right before the show. Well, I guess partially. Stu was kind of like the odd man left out because he has other obligations before the start of the show. But right before the show, I was FaceTiming with Samter's beautiful baby girl. And let me tell you, she eats well. There was some pizza, there was some pasta, there was some vegetables as well. I may have to move in, Samter. I may need a little couch space or the spare bedroom, because if that's how the baby's eating, all I had today was like a protein bar and a protein shake and a little salad. I think the baby's eating better than me.
All I get is leftovers. Whatever the baby doesn't eat is what goes onto my plate. So I think you won't be eating nearly as well as you think you will be.
Okay. Oh, that's a little bit deflating. But I don't want to ruin a good moment, so I'll continue to move forward. Bobby Carpenter will join us coming up in about an hour 20 from now as we'll go around the college football landscape. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, one of my all-time favorites from CBS, Westwood One, and, of course, Turner Sports, Kevin Harlan will stop by. But we got to start off with the San Francisco 49ers because the San Francisco 49ers are making a move, and they are taking Steve Wilkes from the coaching box upstairs, and they're moving him down onto the field. And that's their big adjustment that they made after the bye week. Also, they did go out there and they acquired Chase Young as well. So you get a little bit more of some ammunition for this defense, which a few weeks ago was a dominant defense, looked like they were going to kick the crap out of anyone that they were going to play. And really, the last few weeks, they've started to look human, and that defense did an awful job up against one of the better quarterbacks in football in Joe Burrow. So the San Francisco 49ers now sit at 5-3. And the question is being asked, where is your concern level with the San Francisco 49ers? And are the 49ers more so the team that we saw the first 5 weeks of the season when they were 5-0, where they kicked the crap out of Pittsburgh, beat the Rams, the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys? Or are they more of the team that we've seen the last 3 weeks where it came right down to the wire against Cleveland, they lose. Comes right down to the wire against Minnesota, they lose. And then you did have the Cincinnati Bengals show and assert that they were the better team for the majority of that game. And this is why, and I think the source is going to be ironic here since it's coming from me, I'm not worried about the San Francisco 49ers. Now, there's different degrees that you could take that statement. You go, well, Zach, what does worried mean on your scale? I still believe the San Francisco 49ers are a playoff team. No crap. I still believe the San Francisco 49ers are going to win the NFC West. I said going into this season, they're one of the better teams in football. I still believe at the end of the year, they'll be one of the better teams in football. But before the season commenced, I did not pick them to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl because I believed that the Philadelphia Eagles are a better team. And through the first 9 weeks of the season, not that any championship trophies are handed out, the Philadelphia Eagles are 8-1. The San Francisco 49ers are 5-3. And the 49ers go from a team that we thought was going to have home field advantage or be in the race for home field advantage to a team now that is really going to be competing for either the second or third seed in the NFC. And I understand 49ers fans. You still play the Eagles, and the Eagles have a tough stretch coming up, but so do you guys. Like the next 4 or 5 games for the 49ers, you play Jacksonville, no pushover. You play Tampa, a team you should beat. And then you go in a 3-week stretch where you're at Seattle on Thanksgiving night, then you're in Philadelphia, and then you have another game up against the Seattle Seahawks. And oh yeah, by the way, you still have the Baltimore Ravens on your schedule. So to think, when you already have a slim margin and making up ground to get the number 1 seed and have home field advantage, run through Santa Clara to get to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl, you almost can't make a mistake. Even if the Eagles fall, it's not as automatically as you jump up and take their spot, because as you both go into Week 10, I know the Eagles are on the bye, and you guys have a game up against the Jaguars, you're sitting there at 5-3, and the Eagles are 8-1. But I think previous history matters. And I was just talking to Channing Crowder, former NFL linebacker, and does a great job inside the NFL and on the Pivot podcast. So let me just say this right out of the gate. The Zach Gelb Show is with Channing Crowder over Brandon Marshall in this big dispute and feud that's been going on through the last 2 years. But with all that being said, Channing Crowder just asked me, and he does a local radio show in Miami, Zach, why are you out on the Miami Dolphins, but when other teams fall, you're still in on them? And I said, when I'm out on the Miami Dolphins, I still believe they'll win the AFC East. I still believe that they could win a playoff game, but expectations change when the Dolphins get off to this hot start. And I went from thinking the Dolphins were a Super Bowl contender to when you lose to Buffalo, you lose to the Eagles, and you lose to the Chiefs. I think your limitations this year are just going to be a good team, not a great team. And he goes, well, the Eagles lost to the Jets, and the Chiefs, right, they've lost to the Broncos. The 49ers have lost 3 in a row. Why don't you change your expectations for those teams? And I said to him, because previous history matters. And there's some teams that have the benefit of the doubt. The Eagles, when they lose to the Jets, and Jalen Hurts throws a bad interception at the end of the game, it's their first loss of the year. And there's no question if the Eagles could get to the Super Bowl. We just saw them do it a year ago. For Kansas City, it was the same song and dance last year. Oh, what's the offense going to look like without Tyreek Hill? Oh, can the Chiefs get down in a big game and come on back like they've been notoriously known for? And then in the Super Bowl last year, Kansas City's down 10 at halftime, and they end up winning the game. You look at the 49ers, the same point resonates here, where it does feel like in the last 5 years, the 49ers wake up each and every year, regardless of what happens in the regular season, and they are in the NFC title game. So let's just look in a small sample size, just the last 2 seasons, where this team was after 9 weeks heading into week 10. Back in 2021, this team was 3-5. 3-5 after 9 weeks of the season. They ended the year 10-7. They won 2 playoff games against Dallas, of course, against the Green Bay Packers. And then they lost in the fourth quarter in an NFC title game. You then take a glance in just last season. After 9 weeks, they were 4-4. The 49ers finished 13-4, and they made it to the NFC title game where they lost Brock Purdy, and they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 31-17. So I guess when people say, what's the true 49ers team? I will believe that it's more so the 49ers, even if it won't be that dominant, that we saw the first 5 weeks of the season, rather than the 49ers that we've seen on display from week 6 through 8. Because they get the benefit of the doubt. But with that being said, that isn't good enough to just get to the NFC title game this year. Because we've seen this team now get to the NFC title games on more than a few occasions. We saw them get to it in 2019. They made it to the Super Bowl. We saw them get it in 2021. They lost to the Rams. We saw them get there in 2022. They lost to the Eagles. So if this is where it's heading again, up and down in the first half of the season, then they get hot late, and they only get to an NFC title game, you are missing taking advantage of the window that you have in front of you. Because just like the Buffalo Bills, where I guess you could draw some similarities with the Bills and the 49ers, those have been 2 teams, even though the 49ers have had more success and have gone farther, both of those 2 teams have been in it the last 3, 4, 5 years. And neither of those teams found a way to walk away with the Lombardi Trophy. And now it appears that the Bills window is on extremely shaky grounds and looks like it's just about to get slammed shut or needs to be retooled. And for the 49ers, I still think they could get to an NFC championship game, but I don't believe it's going to be as easy as it appeared 4 or 5 weeks ago, because now losing 3 games, you're probably not going to get the 1 seed. And can this team go on the road? Absolutely. But if they have to go to an NFC championship game, right now it's looking like it will be in either Philadelphia, which is a tough environment to play in, or even if you have to go the divisional round in the second round of the playoffs, you may have to go to Detroit. Because I know Detroit has 2 losses, but they have an easy-peasy schedule the rest of the way besides like the final 3 weeks of the season. And the Detroit Lions, if you're telling me they have a home divisional round game coming off a home wild card victory, and they have an opportunity to go to the NFC title game, and Jared Goff doesn't have to go on the road, that game becomes a whole lot more intriguing than probably what we thought it would be 3-4 weeks ago. And this is my biggest problem with the 49ers. And I understand we started the topic off with the defense and how the defense has to get better and how they make the change with Steve Wilks. You'll hear from Kyle Shanahan in just a second. But I did say this before the start of the season with the 49ers. The one thing that gave me pause about the 49ers before the start of the season, even though you acknowledge they have one of, if not the best rosters in the NFL, they have treated the quarterback position, even with all the success the last 4 or 5 years, like how I play roulette. Like, that's what they do. They just spin it around and hope that the ball falls on their number. And that's what they've done with the quarterback position. And going into this year, I was intrigued by what Brock Purdy did a year ago down the stretch. But with that being said, I don't know what Brock Purdy's going to look like over the full regular season. And we've seen some good Brock. We've seen some bad Brock. But the most important thing for Brock Purdy, who I call right now more of a system quarterback than someone that's a franchise quarterback, and people are up in arms, and all the 49ers fans are like, screw this Zach Gelb guy. He's just a hater. Deebo Samuel hung up the phone on him. Good for Deebo. Gelb sucks, blah, 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 blah. The reason I said that was because look at the environment he's in. You don't need him to be great. You don't. And the last few weeks, you've seen Deebo go out. Trent Williams get hurt. Even though McCaffrey keeps on getting into the end zone, he's not 100%. And then, to no surprise, Brock Purdy looks human. So that's another reason why you should believe in the 49ers, at least to get back to a divisional round or an NFC title game. And then we'll see if they could slay the Eagles, who, as long as Jalen Hurts stays healthy, I think the Eagles will be in the NFC title game. And I do believe the Eagles will be in the Super Bowl. But with the 49ers getting healthier, you would anticipate that Brock Purdy's going to play better because he has his weapons back. So let's hear from Kyle Shanahan. This was Kyle Shanahan the other day on why Steve Wilks is moving down to the field coming out of the bye week.
We're going to put him on the field this week. Something we've talked about for a little bit. There's pluses to it and minuses to it, but we'll see what we like about this week. I kind of want him to be down and be near our players a little bit. They've had that more just with the linebacker communication in the past, and I want him to be down there so he can talk to guys a little bit more.
So that's the reasoning for it. I think when you have a defense that everyone acknowledges is great, they start to stub their toe. I don't believe that having some adjustments or changing the way that you used to do things is the worst thing in the world, and I really believe there's no harm in this move. But they're scheduled the rest of the way. Let's just do a quick win-loss here. Jaguars, I think they go to Jacksonville and win. I think they go to Tampa and win. I think they beat Seattle in Seattle and they win 3 in a row. I think they lose in Philadelphia. Then I do believe that they will split the Seahawks. So I'll give the Seahawks a loss a second time around, or the 49ers a loss. I think they'll beat Arizona. Right now, I would say the Ravens is a toss-up. I'll say that they lose to the Baltimore Ravens. They beat the Commanders, and they beat the Rams. So that would put them with 6 losses on the season. That probably is the 3 seed. The Lions would probably be the 2, and then the Eagles would be the 1. And if you tell me that the 49ers are the 3 seed, it's not that they can't go into these road environments and win, but you just made the road a little bit tougher because you much rather have the game at Santa Clara. But as long as this team is healthy, you're not going to be jumping for joy saying, oh, the 49ers are coming into your house for a playoff game, because they have experience and they have a heck of a team. And even if they do go out, they're going to be a tough out. Because there's sometimes, right, you see in the postseason, you don't get a bye, but then who your opponent is, you're like, oh, that's an easy game. I remember like years ago, the Patriots played the Broncos with Tim Tebow coming into town. You knew you had a bye week. Or whatever, the Patriots would play Tennessee in the playoffs outside of Brady's final game in a Patriot uniform. I'm going back years and years ago. There's some games that appear to be a bye in the playoffs, even if you have to play them. The 49ers will never be considered by another opponent, oh, this is a team that we're just going to take easy and they're coming into town, or we have to go there and this is going to be an easy victory for us. It is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio, 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. I will say this, though. I smell a little bit of a fraud alert, though. Even though I just defended the 49ers. Don't you think it's funny, Samter, that Ryan in Santa Barbara was so passionate and called so much and in great frequency the first 4, 5, even 6 weeks of the season. But ever since that Minnesota loss, ever since that Cincinnati Bengals loss, where now it's a 3-game losing streak, and maybe he went away because he thinks he's a part of the team. Maybe he went away on the bye week. But I've not heard from Ryan. And I wonder when Ryan reappears. Will it be now when there are tough times? Or will he only pop up and kind of be like a drama Dallas choking Cowboys fan where you only are present when the team is doing well and then you have to slap your face on a milk carton when the team is doing poorly? If I had to say, in the next 2 weeks, do you think we hear from Ryan in Santa Barbara? Do you think we will hear from him in the next 2 weeks?
I'm looking at the phone right now. He's going to call in the next 20 minutes.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
We sent the bat signal out?
Yeah. So
the Gelb signal?
Ryan, I know, is not one of those guys who shies away when his team is struggling, but also he answers the bell when his name is called.
We'll see. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about him. We haven't heard from him in the last 2 weeks. I'm a little concerned.
Here's just another random question.
Mm-hmm.
Were they maybe a little bit too quick on the Trey Lance trade? Did they jump
Fair.
into the Brock Purdy all-in basket a little bit too quickly and then just gave up on Trey Lance?
So I do think you're onto something. I don't believe there was any harm in keeping Trey Lance on the roster. And when you have a team that has a legit Super Bowl opportunity, and he was supposed to be your starting quarterback and was your starting quarterback at the beginning of last season before the injury, with all that you gave up for him, I don't believe there was any harm on keeping Trey Lance on the roster. But this goes into the ego and the QB roulette that Kyle Shanahan plays. Kyle Shanahan originally did not want Trey Lance on the team. I don't care what anybody says. He was talked into drafting Trey Lance. And once things just minorly started to go the wrong way for Trey Lance, Kyle Shanahan gave up on him. So I don't know. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan viewed Trey Lance as a distraction, but maybe you could make the case that he did, because if you're asking that question, removed from the situation, Samter, you know the 49ers media members would be asking the same questions the moment Brock Purdy has struggled. I don't think Brock has played poor enough, let me be clear, to suggest that there would be a benching. But if Brock gets hurt, or if Brock plays 3-4 bad games in a row, which he has not done yet, then those calls for Trey Lance would have grown louder and louder. So maybe, yeah, it was Shanahan thinking, I don't believe in this kid. Let's just get him out of the building so we could fully show our support to Brock Purdy. And we'll have to wait and see. And if Brock Purdy does not succeed, you bet your ass that Kirk Cousins, you like that, will be the QB for the 49ers next season. Take a break. When we come on back, the Raiders' outlook the rest of the way. Smoking victory cigars after a win against the lowly, pathetic New York Giants. Now the Raiders have the New York Jets on Sunday Night Football this week in Las Vegas. Is there some optimism for the Raiders? Is the Rich Bisaccia effect from a few years ago maybe happening now with Antonio Pierce? We'll discuss on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio when we return in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
Ryan in Santa Barbara, I thought he was going to avoid me today after his 49ers didn't go down. What?
Come on, Zach.
What
Listen.
happened?
No,
What
here's the
happened?
bottom line. Don't talk. Don't talk. I guarantee the Niners will win the Super Bowl.
You lost.
You
and
won
your great
the
quarterback, hold on.
Eagles.
Your great quarterback, Brock Purdy, doesn't look like an
Yeah, he
MVP
did.
when Debo and McCaffrey are out. Ryan, you want to be me. You'll never
Love
be
you.
me. I can out-scream you any day of the week. Get off my show.
This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Man, you can stream the NFL on Westwood One for free, sponsored by AutoZone all season long. You can listen to every Westwood One broadcast of the NFL Live on the NFL app by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports, or on the Odyssey app. Get in the zone, AutoZone. AutoZone's free battery testing and charging is available for free at your local AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Restrictions apply. All righty, let's hear a little bit from Davante Adams right now as Davante Adams responds to some of the backlash that I guess the Raiders have received from their victory cigar celebration after taking care of the New York Football Giants last week.
Well, I don't look at what the cigars thing as something that's not as corporate. I mean, it's definitely different in the middle of the season, but at the end of the day, anybody that's dealt with the type of adversity that we have this year and just the ups and downs and all the negative attention and a lot of drama and stuff, they'll never understand why we had that feeling and why it led to cigars being, lit in the locker room. Obviously, not everybody agrees with it, but you won't last in this league if you care too much about what other people think and how they feel about what you do. Now we just got to make it normal. That way we don't have to light cigars in the locker room after regular season wins.
So let's go to our Raider fan here, Stu. I think that was more so not necessarily a victory cigar, because when you think of a victory cigar, it's alrighty. A team wins a national championship or a team wins a Super Bowl or like a big win. That Raiders win up against the Giants was not a big win. If you can't beat the Giants, there's more problems than just Josh McDaniels, and I know by that point Josh McDaniels was fired. That was a cigar to dance on the grave and give a bleep you to Josh McDaniels and to kind of drag his body around the locker room and really show the dislike that this Raiders team had for their former head coach.
100%. It was, thank God Josh McDaniels is gone.
Ding dong, the witch is dead.
He's out of here. We have a new life, whether that means 1 win or 2 wins or how many wins it means for the rest of the year. It means it's it's like a new start for them. And, it's not a huge win, but at the same time, they're rid of McDaniels, so it's different.
And I don't know what you'll think of this opinion. And I'm happy that the Raiders fan base and the Raiders players don't have to deal with the wrath of Josh McDaniels anymore. He is clearly just a really good offensive coordinator, but when you ask him to be a leader of men, when you ask him to be the head honcho, the head coach of the football team, he's just incapable of leading the entire team and setting the right tone in a locker room. And he has this Belichick approach of my way or the highway, and the Belichick way, the Patriot way. But as you see with what's going on in New England right now, to some extent, when you're not winning, people like to expose that way. And also, when you are Josh McDaniels and you don't have the clout of Bill Belichick because you've won nothing as a head coach, to go into a locker room and say, you have to do this, you have to do that, and have no discourse, especially in the year of 2023 when you see personalities that are more player-friendly like Mike McDaniel and Dan Campbell as well, Nick Sirianni, where I'm not saying those teams don't work hard and it's just a country club lifestyle, but those coaches know how to relate to their players. And I do sometimes believe when you have someone that's a nice guy or you have someone that has good relationships with players, when that coach then raises his voice or tries to set a stern tone in the locker room in a moment of adversity when it's needed, sometimes it's more effective because you're close with that coach. You believe in that coach and you go, oh, he usually treats us this way and that way. Now he's getting annoyed. So we need to pick up our crap and do our job. Like, I was once a counselor at a sleepaway camp. I was a division leader. So I was in charge of 50 to 60 7th and 8th grade boys and also about 12 to 15 staff members. And for the most part, I think everyone liked me, and everyone's like, oh, this is a friendly guy, but I was also a leader. But with that being said, when there was moments when there were problems and I raised my voice or I said, you need to do something this way, they were more receptive because the people enjoyed me, the people liked me, and they respected me. It's clear in the Raiders locker room, no one respected, or very few people respected Josh McDaniels. So when you're not winning, and even in Davante Adams' case, when they did get a win and he was annoyed with his targets, Davante Adams knows what winning looks like, and he knows what being around a winning culture is. And even though Josh McDaniels comes from winning, that's being an OC with Belichick and also with Tom Brady. So when you're trying to swing your you-know-what around and saying, I'm the big man on campus, I'm the dude, I'm the guy, and you're treating like everyone in the locker room poorly, and you're not winning games, the little things, even maybe in a win, are going to set you off. because it's personal now and you want to go after the football coach. With all that being said, and let me preface it once again, I'm happy that Josh Jacobs doesn't have to deal with Josh McDaniels anymore. And Devontae Adams and all those players, and Antonio Pierce is now the interim coach, and he's already a better leader of men than Josh McDaniels was. But I will say, in the last week, the Raiders, I don't want to say they've become obnoxious and insufferable because that wouldn't be right. But like the Raiders now thinking that everything is cured and that they're going to get hot and that they're going to go on this win streak. And now people are asking on national shows, like, are the Raiders back? Are the Raiders for real? Are the Raiders going to go and get hot like they did a few years ago under Rich Bisaccia? That conversation just makes the hair on my neck like stand up because it's, okay, you beat the Giants. Your wins this year are the Broncos. They stink. Green Bay, they stink. New England, they stink. The Giants, they stink. So, like, I understand the smell of McDaniels and the horror of McDaniels is gone. But at 4-5, I don't think there's much new life with the Raiders in terms of them going on a run. In terms of locker room chemistry, that only takes you so far. You got to have talent. And the Raiders have talent. Max Crosby is one of the best defensive players in the sport. Josh Jacobs, he'll be awesome down the stretch. Devontae Adams is happier. We all know he's one of the top wide receivers in the league. But what else do the Raiders have? And you look at their schedule the rest of the way. Yeah, you should be able to beat the Jets this weekend. But that's not a lock. You then play Miami. That's a loss. You play the Chiefs. That's a loss. You then play the Vikings. They have life. That's a toss-up. You play the Chargers. A toss-up. You play the Chiefs again. A loss. Indianapolis, they're not a great team, but it's a toss-up. And then you should be able to beat Denver again, even though Denver, right, is, I guess, starting to get back into a better spot, even though I don't believe in it. So I just went through that entire schedule. I'm not saying they're going to lose all these games, but there's no game that you look at on that schedule and go, that's 100% a win. And I don't know what Aiden O'Connell is. I think it's a better option right now than Jimmy Garoppolo. Outside of Max Crosby, what else does this defense have? The offensive line is problematic too. So the Raiders continue to have like star power in Crosby and Adams and Jacobs. And it's good that McDaniels is out there. But what else do you really have? So Stu, just entertain me here for a second. Because you're the Raider fan. But I think you're a realistic Raider fan. But if anyone's going to give the Raiders the benefit of the doubt, I'm not saying that's you, but just with the options that I have here, you may spin a little bit more positive when going on a win-loss schedule. If a game's like 50-50, you may lean Raiders over the other team. So I want to get the pulse of the Raider fan base right now. And we go to the great Stuart Kovacs, who is like a normal human being, and you wouldn't expect him to be a Raider fan. And I don't think Stu dresses up like whatever Raider fans dress up as. I don't even know how to call that, but we've been to all the events and you see all the gear that the Raider fans wear. You're not dressing in all these costumes, right?
No, never have.
Why not?
I don't know. If I go to a Raider game, I just wear a jersey. I don't wear I don't
the
paint
mask.
my face. Yeah, I don't paint my face silver. I don't.
You don't
wear
dress
the
up like that gorilla guy,
all
right?
the spikes on like the shoulder pads, all that. Yeah.
Imagine bringing a kid, like an 8-year-old, to your first ever Raiders game, and you just see the collection of people that are walking around. Could be a scary sight.
Yeah, definitely.
So here we go. Jets this weekend. Win or loss?
Win.
Okay. At Miami the following week.
Loss.
Kansas City.
Loss.
Bye week?
Okay. They have a bye week then. That's good.
I'm just saying.
Nice.
The Raiders can't. If there's one team that could lose a bye week, it's the Raiders.
Yeah, sure.
The Minnesota Vikings.
It's like you said, it's a toss-up. I'll say coming off the bye, win.
Ooh. Chargers.
Loss.
Short week, Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, loss.
Okay, wow, that was quick. At the Chiefs.
Loss.
And we have at the Colts.
Win.
And then the Broncos.
I think they lose, actually, because they beat them already. I feel like they'll split with the Broncos this year. So they'll win 3 more games.
That was 3 more games. That was the Jets. That was the Vikings. And that was the Colts.
Yeah, and the Vikings I'm very, 51-49 on.
And let's say you're right. That's 7 wins. Let's say if you get a game wrong and it should have been a win, like this at best is going to be an 8-9 team.
Yeah,
and
like the Bears. They lost to the Bears, who I thought they'd win. Yeah.
And 8-9, like going 8-9 and winning 4 more games this season would be impressive and would make a case for Antonio Pierce to keep his job. But to just get to 9 wins is going to be a stretch where you're going to have to win 5 more games this season, and you have the Jets, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Vikings, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Colts, and then Denver. So there's only 8 games left in this season. It's tough for me to say that this team's going to go 5-3 in their final 8 games. And I was talking very slowly there because I am not good at mental math, and I think I got those numbers right. I know Dr. Raymond Coughlin at Temple University, who used to be friends with the real Rudy, had him come and speak to us at campus once. I know he's very proud with all those math skills. I took one math class in college because that was the requirement. Got a C. And boys and girls, children of all ages, I know we do a Zach Gelb Show PSA on this Thursday. This is not the PSA, but sometimes C's get degrees. And that was my philosophy when I was in college. All righty. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. Where's your belief level in the Raiders? 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. We'll come on back. We'll update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. But first up, standing by with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here he is, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, we are now past the midway point of the season with Week 10 beginning tonight in Chicago, where the 2-7 Bears host the 1-7 Panthers. Not exactly the way the NFL would have drawn it up. The Bears are headed for 2 high picks in the draft and have their own, and the Panthers as well, and both are in the top 5 right now. The Bears are turning to Tyson Bagent again, with Justin Fields still not cleared to play. The former Division II star has held his own so far. Head coach Matt Eberflus said the short turnaround provides another challenge for his new QB.
His process of going through, getting the game plan. It's a short week, so, man, you got to really focus on, yes, this is what I need to improve on from last week, but if I get in that situation again, I know what to do now.
Bryce Young has struggled in his rookie year. The top pick overall was picked off 3 times on Sunday, and 2 of those returned for touchdowns. The Bengals were without Jamar Chase and T. Higgins again at practice today, which does not bode well for their status this weekend. Quinn Ewers is returning for Texas. He'll start against TCU on Saturday. College basketball today, Baylor an easy winner by 26 over John Brown, 96-70. I'm Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio is everywhere, Perloff, at home, in your car, and, of course, on your phone and tablet.
Maggie, you can find us on your local affiliate, Sirius XM Channel 158, or the free Odyssey app.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
All right, yesterday we played you Mike Vrabel announcing that Will Levis is his starter for the rest of the season. Let's go to the man that's getting replaced by Will Levis, and that's Ryan Tannehill.
Well, it hits hard. I mean, never been in this situation before, so, it hits hard. Never a situation that anyone wants to be in. But it's the situation I'm in, so got to walk through it.
We've seen before Ryan Tannehill replace someone, right, in Tennessee, where he replaced Marcus Mariota, and now someone is replacing him. So it stinks. You're still getting paid. Now, as a competitor, you want to be out there on the field, but this is not a wrong decision. And I never said that Ryan Tannehill said that, but this is not a wrong decision by the Tennessee Titans because they're not going anywhere this year. Ryan Tannehill is not the long-term answer. He did a nice job in Tennessee. He did a good job. Give him credit for that. We'll see where he lands next year. But now you need the new era to start, and you should usher that in with the way that he's played the last 2 weeks with Will Levis. Let's go to Troy Aikman. This was on Monday Night Football this past week, Jets and Chargers. Listen up to how Troy Aikman commented about Quinnen Williams.
Quinnen Williams, he keeps telling Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich they got to come up with some ways to give him some single opportunities so he can get some sacks. He says he's the highest paid decoy in football.
So let me just ask a question here, guys. Do you think that's Troy Aikman saying, I talked to Quinnen Williams and Quinnen Williams says he's the biggest decoy in football? Or was that, hey, Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich was the person I was talking to, and they said that about Quinnen Williams? Because that's the part to me, before we get to Quinnen Williams' response, that I thought was ambiguous.
It's definitely ambiguous from a grammatical standpoint. When you talk about pronouns and what subject the pronoun is referencing. it is technically that he's referring to Quinnen Williams. But when you listen to the whole clip, I guess you can infer, especially based off of what we're going to hear next from Quinnen Williams, you can infer that maybe he was talking to Saleh or one of the other coaches who was the one who said it. But in the clip itself, when he says it from a grammatical standpoint, it actually, he's referring, like the sound refers to Quinnen Williams.
And
so
sometimes,
he might not have meant it, but that's what it is.
And I listened to the full clip, and sometimes when you're speaking for a long period, you say something and you think the way that you're trying to say it is coming out the right way, but you're speaking for so long and like you're in the middle of a sentence and you go back to something that you were saying and then you try to continue the thought. I do lean more with you that it does sound like to most that Quinnen Williams said to him, hey, I'm the biggest decoy in football. But when I heard the full clip, I'm like, he may be talking about Saleh and Ulbrich said that. But then why would Saleh and Ulbrich saying that knowing Quinnen Williams' importance to the team? Now, maybe the point was Quinnen Williams allows so many other players to benefit off the force that he puts on offensive linemen and other guys eat, and he does a great job to expose or to get the best out of those other players. Maybe it's something like that, and the word decoy was said. But like Troy Aikman's a guy that is a professional. I don't think Troy Aikman is someone that usually makes stuff up, and there's no need for him to get clicks. Look at the contract that he gets, and he's just a game analyst right now and a legendary quarterback. So this is Quinnen Williams on Aikman's decoy comments. He took issue with them.
I seen something like Troy Aikman said that I said something about being a decoy. Like, I never said that. Like, I never talked to Troy Aikman. I never said that to Troy Aikman. Like, I don't know where he got that from. Like, I never came out of my mouth that I was the highest paid decoy or something like that he said on Monday night or something like that. Yeah. So I never said that. Like, I never talked to him before the game. I never alluded to that. Like, it's never been out of my mouth. Like, I never had a conversation with him at all. So to hear him say that I said that is kind of like upsetting that he would lie on me like that or say that I said that. So that's kind of weird to me. So.
It was a little misleading what he said.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely misleading.
Now, I've talked to Quinnen Williams before. I think he's a really good person. He's a heck of a football player, and I think there's like an innocence to Quinnen Williams too with some of the moments that he's had in the media as well. So I give Quinnen Williams the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to trust Quinnen Williams when he says he hasn't talked to Troy Aikman. And to get back to our previous conversation, I think this was Troy kind of fumbling his words a little bit. And he meant that the comment was more so from Saleh and Ulbrich rather than a direct conversation with Quinnen Williams. Let's go to Justin Jefferson. This 21-day window has opened for him to return coming off IR. Now, the big question is, Jay Jettis, when will you get back on the field?
The guys and the rest of the coaching staff in this building know my worth on the field, and they want me 100%, and as I do as well. I don't want to go out there 80, 90% and have the chance of hurting it again. So it's just, day to day, just like I said.
And I remember when he first went down, it was like, oh, the Vikings are going nowhere. You're waiting for a new contract. Maybe you just don't come back this year. Now at 5-4, even if they lose this week to the Saints and they go to 5-5, which is a winnable game, if you're at 5-5 and you can get Justin Jefferson back from week 11 and on, that would be an absolute steal for the Minnesota Vikings. Here is Ryan Day, as if you had the over of 49 minutes on when we would first address Ryan Day, Ohio State, Michigan today, you have won because it's currently 3:50 p.m. Eastern. Here is Ryan Day on reports that Ohio State collaborated with Rutgers against Michigan.
Nobody here did any of that. So, we went through and made sure we went and, asked all the questions and, got our compliance people involved. And none of that came back at all. So, I could answer, very strongly that did not happen.
Well, as a head coach, I got to think what's going on. So then you have all these compliance people that basically launch an investigation internally and quickly. Everyone says, no, that's not the case. Come on. Even if it is true, are you going to have the proof of it? And are you going to admit it when there's no reason for you to admit it right now? And there's all this kind of gamesmanship that goes on in the sport, and sometimes it does go too far. The latest in the whole Michigan scandal is from Adam Rittenberg, ESPN. While we wait, although the Big Ten has considered a suspension for Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh, it is considering a range of possibilities, including a significant fine, sources told college football, Heather, which is Heather Dinich, and me. Public reprimands and fines are common penalties under the Big Ten sportsmanship policy. That may actually be the best thing for the Big Ten to do right now. I think a lot of people roll their eyes and go, oh, it's only a fine. We wanted more, blah, blah, blah. The Big Ten should do nothing right now in terms of a suspension. Eventually punt this down the road and let the NCAA handle this. But if you want to fine him, go ahead. It's really no harm when you look at the bank account of Jim Harbaugh. Here is Urban Meyer, who has high praise for Jalen Milroe after his performance up against LSU. Urban's take with Tim May.
The Reggie Bush, Percy Harvin of college football is playing quarterback at Alabama.
Yeah.
And they're running him. He had 130 yards rushing, 20-some carries, 25 carries. And there's a couple clips on that videotape that he is, he's other than Marvin Harrison, he's the best athlete in college football, and he's touching the ball every snap for Alabama.
That's some serious praise right there from Urban Meyer, who, say what you want about Urban Meyer, he does know what he's talking about when it comes to college football. And Jalen Milroe in the game up against LSU had 20 carries for 155 yards and 4 touchdowns. And through the air, he had 219 yards. I'm not saying you need 4 touchdowns every week and 155 yards rushing every week, but if you have that balance and you get that production somewhere close to that, even if it's a notch or two below from Jalen Milroe, with the defense Alabama has, Alabama goes from a team that we thought was on the ropes to now becoming a really dominant team. And here is Nick Saban on Jalen Milroe, this via the Pat McAfee Show.
In certain cases, his running ability is going to be a factor for us, and we want to utilize that the best we can. And in other cases, the skill guys that we have and the arm talent that he has is something that we can take advantage of. So it's kind of a combination of both, moving forward.
And Alabama right now is rolling, and I think they're destined to go to the SEC title game and have that matchup against Georgia with Kentucky, Chattanooga, and Auburn remaining. Here is Victor Wembanyama on a bad loss in his first game at Madison Square Garden.
Such a great arena. And, we did have a rough start collectively. And, but we're young, the youngest team in the league, so we're learning.
Mike Breen made a great point after the game. We all get obsessed with a rookie like Victor Wembanyama, especially where the hype is, and everyone expects greatness every night they watch him. That's just not realistic. And there's going to be some nights, like we saw a little while ago, where Victor Wembanyama has 38 points and is lethal and looks like he's everything that he's hyped up to be. And then there's going to be some poor performances like the one that you saw last night for the Spurs. It's just unfortunate. With his first game in Madison Square Garden, a lot of people watching, a big reason to tune in. They didn't perform all that well, but there's going to be some good moments and bad moments at the end of the year. I do believe we'll be talking about Victor Wembanyama in a sensational way. One writer would not vote J.J. McCarthy for the Heisman. We discuss it next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
How we doing on a Thursday? It is the Zach Gelb Show. Hour number 1 in the books. We start hour number 2 right now. Bobby Carpenter, the former NFL and Ohio State linebacker, will stop by in 20 minutes. And then also at the top of the hour, 60 minutes from now, legendary play-by-play man for CBS, Westwood One, and Turner Sports, Kevin Harlan, will join us. So I was reading an article the other day out of the Indy Star from Greg Doyle, who's a longtime pundit and writer, and he's also a Heisman Trophy voter. Now, full disclosure, last year I became a Heisman Trophy voter as well. The Heisman Trust, they reached out to me. They said, we have a vote open in your area of New York. Would you like to be a Heisman Trophy voter? We know you've been covering the Heisman and college football and been talking about it for a while. Said absolutely it would be an honor to vote. Now, the one thing that the Heisman Trust stresses to you in the voting process is to not make your vote public until after the trophy is handed out. Because the ballots come out, I think they come out in a few weeks, but sometimes you could submit them right when they're out. And sometimes people, and I don't get why people do this, they submit them before the conference championship games are played. But if you have that week after conference championship week leading into the Heisman and you don't reveal your votes, then it becomes intriguing on who wins the Heisman, even though I think for most years you have a good sense of who is actually going to win it. But for example, like last year, it literally came down to the conference championship weekend. Because sometimes there's a guy that has clearly separated himself from the pack. You know his team is going to win the conference championship. And then from that, you kind of already know where you're going to go. But last year, I really do believe this. And I said this to Sonny Dykes earlier in the season, the head football coach at TCU, when I had him on in the summer. I said to him, I really do believe if you handed the ball off to Max Duggan at the end of the Big 12 championship game, which they did go on to win, TCU, which they lost in the Big 12 championship game, to Kansas State, and then they still went on to the college football playoff. But I really did believe that if they got the ball in the end zone with Max Duggan, Max would have won the award. But since they lost the Big 12 championship game, I think that knocked Max Duggan down at least a few spots. And my ballot last year was Blake Corum was in at number 3. I had Max Duggan as 2, and then Caleb Williams was in at number 1. So the Heisman Award is something that we obviously make a big deal about it. It is also something that I do believe it's important that you don't reveal your votes until after the award is handed out. So I respect that. So Greg Doyle writes this article the other day, and the headline is, Doyle, not fair, says it's not fair to give J.J. McCarthy a Heisman vote if UM coaches cheated before calling plays. So he made it clear in this article, and he said, not to identify the 3 players who will be named on my vote. Well, how would you know that anyway right now? But to name one player who will not, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. Now, I'm not going to sit here and deal in this world of you say something that I don't like, so you need to be canceled. You need your vote taken away. But I do think it's stupid by a fellow voter of mine, and Greg Doyle, to say right now that he would not vote with the information that he knows J.J. McCarthy for the Heisman. Because I would argue that you shouldn't know right now who your top 3 vote getters are. Now, you could go through this and see who your candidates are. Like Marvin Harrison Jr., if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, he should be a finalist. You take a look at Jordan Travis. He's undefeated, the quarterback of Florida State right now. Feels like he should be a finalist. Michael Penix is the favorite right now for the Heisman Trophy. But if Bo Nix beats Michael Penix in the rematch and then wins that Pac-12 championship in the rematch, there's going to be a big case to be made for Bo Nix. And you take a look, Georgia doesn't have a Heisman Trophy candidate, I would say. We'll see what happens if Alabama wins the SEC. And I'm sure I'm missing like a player or 2 just off the top of my head that are just candidates. But for J.J. McCarthy, and I said this back after week 1 of the season, I think he has a very interesting case and a very good opportunity to win the award. Because you look at Michigan last year, their best player and the player that had the best chance to win the Heisman, I really do believe that he would have won the award if he didn't get hurt, was Blake Corum. Now, Blake Corum gets hurt at the end of the season, not available for the biggest game of the year up against Ohio State. They run through Ohio State anyway like a hot knife through butter. Donovan Edwards goes off, and Blake Corum doesn't win the award and doesn't become a finalist. So going into this year, I looked at the way that Michigan was put together, and the reason why I thought JJ had a good chance is because I believe Michigan's going to win the Big Ten championship, and that's part of it. And then you look how loaded they are on offense in a quarterback award. If you are the best or second best team in the nation and you are playing the role of point guard this year, and Blake Corum, who gets a ton of touches but also has to split carries with a loaded backfield, and you have all these wide receivers, J.J. McCarthy, when you look at the Michigan schedule, which is also against a bunch of cupcakes too until Penn State and Ohio State, he's going to have a good case to make. But right now for Greg Doyle to say, I'm not going to give J.J. McCarthy a Heisman vote, I think it's ridiculous. And he's going to claim the mission statement of the Heisman Trophy Trust which is to grow the legacy and preserve the integrity of the Heisman Memorial Trophy, which is, and so forth and so on in the statement. And he says, note the most important words in that sentence and preserve the integrity of the Heisman. Well, this is what I would argue to Greg Doyle. Right now, J.J. McCarthy should be a Heisman Trophy candidate. He has not done enough yet to win the award. But if you're going to tell me, even though he alludes in this article that McCarthy individually did nothing wrong, and it was more so his coach and the coaching staff and the adults in the room. But if you tell me, with everyone now watching and everyone knowing that Penn State has changed their signs and Ohio State has changed their signs and Michigan can't do what they may have been doing in the past, if McCarthy still balls out and smothers Penn State and smothers Ohio State and the team is undefeated and a Big Ten champion, I'm not saying you have to vote for him. You're allowed to do what you want with your award and your ballot. But how are you going to make a case when you only have 3 names to pick from that there's going to be 3 names better than J.J. McCarthy if McCarthy balls out in victories up against Penn State and Ohio State? So I'm not going to slam Greg Doyle, even though I think his article is stupid. I really do. But he's entitled to his article and to his opinion. And I don't think he should get his vote taken away and whatnot. He votes the way that he wants to vote. And I don't think that opinion of other voters, and you will have some people that take this, I'm not saying I don't take it seriously because I do, but like, oh, this is some big crime, and oh, the integrity of the Heisman Trophy is being ruined if you voted for J.J. McCarthy. But once again, how is this an unbalanced playing field against Penn State and Ohio State? And that's the thing to me why I do think this article and the opinion is absurd, because if he goes out and dominates against Penn State and Ohio State, it was on a level playing field, and you knew all year if McCarthy was going to win the award, it was going to be because of his 2 performances in Michigan's legitimately only 2 important games of the regular season. So that's my case, and that's my gripe with the article and the thinking.
The problem I have with that, though, is if a guy comes out and has 2 huge games against the 2 biggest opponents of his schedule, but then isn't great the rest of the year.
But he's played fine this year. He's been good.
Then you don't give him the Heisman. However, with McCarthy, he's played well, but those games in which he played well are in question. So you almost have to, if you're going to take the scandal into consideration, you have to say there's questions as to why he was so good in those other 8 or 9 games. Yes, he may have balled out against Penn State and Ohio State in those last 2 games, but why was he so good in those first 8 games? So the question really is, if you consider
he's a damn good quarterback.
What?
Because he's a damn good quarterback. That's why.
It just depends on not just about how and why, but also, like you said, the integrity of the award. If you want to take that clause and make that a significant situation and issue, then could you disqualify a player who, as a player and his team, benefited from cheating? Then that's your hill to die on, I guess, if you're Greg Doyle or whatever other Heisman voters. But it's a reasonable hill to die on.
Oh, I don't think it's reasonable at all. And once again, the reason why I don't think it's reasonable, and this is why I think the Big Ten should do nothing right now, and this may not be fair because you could lose the games, because it's not like Ohio State's some dog crap team, even though I think they're overrated. But don't do anything right now, because if Penn State gets blown out by Michigan this weekend, and then if Ohio State can't beat Michigan for the 3rd straight year in a row, when everybody knows the playing field is level, well, that shows you why guys like Sean Merriman, who came into the studio yesterday, a colleague that I know both of us respect, and Tiki Barber down the hall.
Speak for yourself.
I know you love Tiki more than anybody. You suck up to him all the time. And they go, oh, hey, Tiki, how you doing? Oh, great to see you. And I know you guys worked together for like a decade, so there's a different relationship there. But those guys that played the game don't think, and a lot of other former athletes too on TV, and I think it's the majority than the minority, that don't actually think the sign stealing is that much of an advantage and it's that big of a deal. And I know what everyone's going to argue and everyone's going to say, but then why do it? And I have no answer to that. And I think it's stupid to do it. I really do. But I don't believe the reason why Michigan is this great team this year is because of the sign stealing. And I don't think they needed to steal the signs to defeat ECU, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, or Purdue. And that's why it goes back to my original point, where you knew McCarthy's stats, signs or not, were going to be good enough going into the final 3 weeks of the season. And if he wants to win the Heisman, he has to dominate against Penn State and dominate against Ohio State. I just think it's too premature by Greg Doyle to come around and go, oh, because of this clause, I won't vote for him. But you're going to look like a dope if McCarthy lights it up against Penn State and lights it up against Ohio State, and then you don't have him as one of your finalists on the 3 votes that you get. Because, like, what happens if, let's say, Washington stumbles and then Oregon somehow also doesn't win the Pac-12? Like, if one of those 2 schools don't win the Pac-12, you're probably not going to have Michael Penix and Bo Nix win the Heisman, even with how great of a year they're having. If Florida State goes down the ACC championship game and they don't get in, Jordan Travis probably not going to win the award. So, like, there's a case in a year where this is open, and, like, there's like 6, 7 guys that you think have a chance. We see a lot of these guys stumble, and sometimes voters just pay attention towards the end of the season, which I don't think is the way to go about this. But when I look at it, the only problem I have is just right now the timing of it. Saying he will not be one of the 3 names on my list. I think you could have an idea of who you're going to vote for. But to declare someone shouldn't be on the list, he goes out there, throws 5 touchdowns against Penn State, and then let's say he throws 6 against Ohio State. You're going to have that same stance to preserve the integrity and of the award? Like, is anyone going to say if J.J. McCarthy gets a Heisman Trophy, oh, he shouldn't get that award? Hey, just shut everyone up in the Penn State-Ohio State game if he goes about that.
Well, the other question also is the Reggie Bush factor. Now, listen, Reggie Bush
he should have his Heisman back.
He should have his Heisman back 100%.
And let me just say this. The Heisman Trust is using the NCAA basically. When you figure out that, then we'll give him the award back.
100%.
The Heisman Trust should just give him back the Heisman Trophy. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. But that same effect, now obviously we go back and we just realize, okay, not a big deal. But that same effect of giving somebody a Heisman and having to take it away, maybe the Heisman voters, maybe the Heisman Trust is saying we don't want to give J.J. McCarthy the Heisman and then have to take it away from him if the NCAA comes down hard on Michigan and their players. So maybe this is almost a preemptive strike saying, okay, you know what? Maybe the cheating scandal wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe J.J. McCarthy would still be the best quarterback or the best player in college football this year with or without the cheating and the sign stealing. However, the stain on the Heisman, the potential of having to take away a Heisman from a deserving candidate like we did with Reggie Bush, and 20 years later, we're still getting on the NCAA and the Heisman.
But
the
individually,
stain is still there.
Is this ever going to be a J.J. McCarthy issue like it was for a Reggie Bush issue? That was his individual eligibility.
The difference is with Reggie Bush, there was no competitive advantage gained on the field.
It was money. Stupid.
It was where he was going to go to school, but it didn't actually give him an advantage on the field.
Getting his mom like a house. Like, who cares?
Right. But, like, again, at the end of the day, was it against NCAA regulation at the time?
Yes.
Probably, but it didn't impact how he played on the field. Stealing signs and having your team get better because of sign stealing actually impacts the play on the field.
And once again, if he dominates Penn State and he dominates Ohio State, how do you not put this guy as one of the 3 names on your ballot, assuming he plays well in those games?
That's the question to ask to the rest of the Heisman voters, whether or not it's worth the potential decade-long stain on the trust and on the award like the Reggie Bush stain has. Is it worth it to give it to the guy who might be the most deserving in a close race, or just leave him off and not worry about it?
And I know we got to take a break, but this just shows how inane and how stupid and the jackassery this is, where once the award is handed out or once wins happen on the field, don't try to tell me, oh, that error never happened, or let's erase it. It's one of the more stupid, petty, petulant things that the NCAA does. All right, it is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We talk some college football with Bobby Carpenter. Next.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Wesley Financial. Stuck in a timeshare and want out? Contact Wesley Financial Group now and get a free timeshare exit information kit at wesleyfinancialgroup.com. CBSSports.com. Let's go out to the hotline right now and welcome in the former NFL linebacker, the national champion at The Ohio State, and that, of course, is the Bobby Carpenter, kind enough to join us right now on CBS Sports Radio on the Zach Gelb Show. Bobby, I know it's been a minute. How you been?
I'm doing well, Zach. Thank you for having me on. And we're right in the throngs here of college football season in the NFL, so you're not getting a whole lot better than that first week in November, riding out to about mid-January.
Yeah, I can't wait. I actually have tickets this year for Michigan, Ohio State on Thanksgiving weekend. And that game is always juicy, but it gets juicier by the day with all this stuff going on in college football right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times, when you have these issues that happen, they always say, they drop breadcrumbs every day. But in this, it's almost been like a loaf of bread that's kind of fallen out of the sky. And if you work in the media, it just gets kind of weirder or juicier, however you want to look at it. There's just all different tentacles and things that are kind of spawning off of this situation up there. And it's, I don't take like a lot of pleasure and delight in it. I want to see this game be played. I want to make sure that it's on the up and up. I, obviously, being a Buckeye alum, would love to see my Buckeyes win, but I don't want to see like Michigan not play in the CFP or not. I want to see them not playing there because they lost it on the field, not because they're being punished in this way. Like if it was before the season, that's a different deal, but we're so far down it now. It's just, I don't know. It feels weird.
So if you were Tony Petitti, would you just punt and do nothing right now?
See, I don't know if you can do that because I know, talking to some of the coaches across the Big Ten, that conference call got pretty heated and people were very upset. And this isn't just an Ohio State thing. I mean, there was multiple coaches across this who've suspected it for a while. They've been kind of submitting things. And that's when people talk about due process, like the evidence has been there and it's been submitted, not just like in the last couple of weeks. Like they've been submitting things over the last year and change. Like these schools were the ones that had all the information. So it's not like there's this big investigation. Like you just kind of lay out what's before you and say, okay, is this, is this that? Like, does this look real? We'll submit some allegations. We'll hear what their response is, then move forward. I mean, I don't know if you suspend Harbaugh, if you suspend coaches, like a fine. I don't know if that really does this justice. Because to me, this isn't, a recruiting thing or, some other nonsense. Like there's people that have diminished like the stealing of signs. And listen, sign stealing, Zach, happens in game all the time. Like going back and forth, you're going to pick stuff up. You're going to understand, when they do this, they do that. This is their check. But it's another thing to like if someone's even recording in game and then like, we got someone going back and looking at it and then marrying it to the plays of what happened. When you've been given that prism of history to look at things, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. And so that's when I look at this, like, and it's not a big deal. I go, dude, if you told me every play in the NFL, if it was a run or a pass, I mean, that's what experience is for. Like, that's why you study tape. That's why you do all those things. So it matters a lot. Like, if you know what coverage the defense is going to be in as a quarterback or a coordinator, like that makes your play calling that much easier as far as what you're ultimately going to do. So, I think there is an element of that where there's, obviously competitive advantage. Hopefully that is gone now. And it would be much easier if they just got those stinking transistor radios, which if I have to hear someone else tell me it's too expensive or, with the altering of the helmets, I'm like, listen,
it's a weak
argument.
Guys
need it.
Yeah,
it is. The 6 guys need them. 3 quarterbacks on offense and 3 defensive players. And that's what the NFL has. And like they use all different helmets. It's not like everyone wears a uniform helmet in the NFL. So I don't want to hear all that nonsense.
Talking to Bobby Carpenter right now. We were just talking about this before you got on. Greg Doyle comes out. I don't know if you're a Heisman Trophy voter. I am, but he's a Heisman Trophy voter as well. And Greg says, I'm not going to vote for J.J. McCarthy to preserve the integrity of the Heisman Trust Award. I argue that if J.J. lights it up on the field against Penn State and Ohio State when it's at a quote-unquote level playing field, how are you going to leave this guy off your ballot? I think that's absurd to keep him off the ballot right now and say from the start you're not going to vote for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be giving Jim Harbaugh Coach of the Year, but as far as like the players in this, I am a Heisman voter, and honestly, as I've been going through this, I haven't really thought of this like impacting an individual player. Whether let's say Blake Corum was having a great year like he did last year prior to the injury, or J.J. McCarthy. Like, I wouldn't be punitive or penalize those guys based upon what has happened. So I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, it'd be one thing if like you saw J.J. McCarthy, if he was like somehow directly involved and connected or something like that. But this is the coaches. He may have benefited from it some, but I'm not going to penalize him for something that he really had no control over.
And that's why, as just like a fan, I think it's the best move if Petitti does nothing right now, because not that you'll get your full answers, but if you line up the football this weekend and everyone knows what's going on, everyone's changed their signs by now, there's no more quote-unquote advantage, and Michigan smacks Penn State, and then in a few weeks, Michigan takes care of Ohio State for the third straight year in a row. I'm not saying no punishment should be done, but you kind of get your answers on how effective this whole scheme was.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. But I will say this, Michigan, and it's amazing what confidence does in life. And maybe that gave a little bit of confidence. They're playing good football now. I tell people, the signs thing, that's not responsible for entirely of what they've done. I feel like it has meant, I think it mattered a lot more in last year's Ohio State game than it did 2 years ago.
Interesting.
I don't know if it 2 years ago, I mean, they handled Ohio State up there. Last year, I go back and look at it, and I talk to some of the guys, and, there's some plays, and I always tell guys, sometimes you just pick a bad play to have a bad play, and it's timed up perfectly, and the stars are against you. Well, a lot of times there's always a coincidence. Well, it may have been a little more than a coincidence last year with that. And so I just don't know how to handle this. Is Harbaugh being on the sidelines versus not? Does that make a significant difference? But I do know that a lot of these Big Ten coaches are very upset, and to the point where, if you're not going to do anything about this, why wouldn't we just fly drones over their practice and film it ourselves?
Yeah.
And it's like the kid. It's like I feel like I'm arguing with my kids on this. If you're not going to punish him or punish I've got 4 kids, so there's always, well, what about their shoes are on or their shirts over here? They didn't put their dishes away. Yeah, but this is a you issue. We're talking about you right now, and then we're trying to mitigate all that. So I wish I had a better answer. I honestly feel for Tony Petitti because he had to clean up the TV contract mess, and then you get this dumped in your lap when everything's going so well. So I don't know if he's almost in a no-win situation, Zach.
When you look at Ohio State this year, Bobby Carpenter, and I've said I don't think they're the best team in the country. I can understand why the committee puts them at number 1, even though it was kind of laughable how much they were hyping up Rutgers the other night on that selection committee show. And I say that as someone that is from New York and has nothing against Rutgers and want to see Rutgers do well. Do you think Ohio State's the best team in the country, or do you even look at that number 1 ranking and go, yeah, they're probably not the best team in the sport this year?
I don't think there's a great team in the sport this year. And so by resume, I think you'd probably say Ohio State, they're pretty good. And I will say this. You're an East Coast guy. This is probably the best Rutgers team there's been in 10 since Greg Schiano was probably there the first time. They're good. Defensively, they're good, and they can run the football.
Trust me, I watched the games when Kyle Flood was the coach, and then Chris Ash as well. Nothing against him. Very nice guy, treated me well. There were some bad games that I had to watch when I was covering Rutgers.
Yeah, they're good. They're a tough team. I mean, they're probably going to win, 8 games, go to a bowl. I mean, Greg Schiano, he's the perfect coach for there. So hopefully they never fire him, and hopefully he doesn't leave. Again, I think he probably has figured that out. But I don't know, Zach, who the best team is. And so by resume, probably default, it's Ohio State. Their defense is playing well. They've got some really good, talented offensive pieces. Have they been consistent all the time? Maybe not as thorough, and you're used to a high-powered offense. I watch Georgia. I'm like, man, Georgia looks pretty good. And then, defensively, they've always been so stout. And, I think Missouri is a good team, but they gave up 151 yards rushing to Missouri, 200 to Auburn. And look at Michigan, they really haven't played anybody of consequence, so it's really tough to get a beat on them. You look at Washington, they beat Oregon, looks good, and then they just stumble around for a couple of weeks. Oregon, I would say, I think is the best team in the Pac-12, except for the fact that Washington beat them. And so I have to say results on the field matter. That's my big thing, so I can't just supersede that. Texas, I think Alabama might be better than them now, but Texas beat Alabama by double digits in Tuscaloosa. So this year, Zach, it's just going to be survive and get there. And I mean, it is the flattest I think it has been, because I think there's probably 6 or 7 teams still that I look at and say they could probably win the national championship if they get the right matchup and play well.
And I tweeted this out today. Before the year, I had Georgia, I had Florida State, Washington, Michigan, and what conference am I forgetting? One other conference as the schools still alive to win the Power 5 conference championships. And the Big Ten, whoever wins the East, we know is going to win the Big Ten championship. Yeah. But it makes it really intriguing for the SEC and the Pac-12, because if we get Bama and Georgia and we get Oregon and Washington, Alabama and Oregon right now are the two most like alive teams in the country. I'm not saying the best teams, but they're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, they're playing the best football right now. They've improved the most, and that's typically what you expect out of a Nick Saban team. They look miles better than what they did the first couple weeks of the season. Heck, they look rough against South Florida. You know, who they're playing Buckner and Ty Simpson, and then they go back to Milroe, and you're like, all right, they're going to just struggle with him, but they've slowly gotten better every week. You know, and so you see that there's been a lot of improvement there. You know, from that. Michigan's played pretty well, but Oregon, like you said, like I was on Washington at the beginning of the season, but I think Washington does have some flaws defensively, and I don't know if they can run it against the team other than USC. I mean, they seem to just let them rush up and down the field. Yeah. But Oregon, I think, is good because they can play a variety of styles. Like, they can get you in a scoring contest if they need to, but they can also slow it down, play a defensive game, and win that way, and like pound the ball on you and run it. So they when you can play in different styles, it gives you some success. And that is the one thing I think that Ohio State has the ability to do this year. We haven't really seen them light it up on offense, but if you look at all the teams this year, the ones that you have confidence in, it's the teams that have good defenses. In the era of like score, you know, why do you think Oregon's better than Washington? Well, because they can play defense. Alabama, because they can play defense. Like, that's a big piece of it now. And so the teams that can get stops, I think, are going to matter a lot this season.
With all that being said, we know how great the Ohio State defense is this year. We know Marvin Harrison is the best non-quarterback in the sport. The big reason why I have skepticism with Ohio State is their quarterback, Kyle McCord. Where's your confidence in the Ohio State quarterback?
You just must not have confidence in him because his dad went to Rutgers. That's probably what you're meaning. He played quarterback there. I honestly think if the Notre Dame game showed me a lot. And for anybody to put together drives like that, and that goes for any quarterback, especially when you're on the road, and when you can put together a final drive, despite what's happened throughout the game, and his ankle was bad, there's a lot of adversity around him. You know, they haven't looked great. And I go back and look, and it's been some small things. And so it's really close. It's not very far off from them being able to go out and score 42 to 49 a game. And I think also a little bit of it, Zach, is Ryan Day has kind of leaned into the fact that, hey, we have a really good defense. It doesn't behoove us to go out there and try to score 50 if in doing that we may throw another pick or have something happen where maybe it puts our defense in jeopardy, and should things not break the right way, then we're in trouble. And so I think he's kind of leaned in to that defensive mentality, which you've seen Nick Saban do this year, some of these other teams. So I think that it's right. It's okay to have criticism there of Kyle. I mean, he hasn't been C.J. Stroud, but if C.J. Stroud is judged off the NFL, is looking pretty darn good so far.
When you look at Ryan Day, only 6 losses in his career. There are some Ohio State fans that are going to say, well, you lost the last 2 to Michigan and they put him on the hot seat. What is kind of the tone with the majority of the Ohio State fan base and not just some of the people that are like yelling about Ryan Day these days?
Well, I think the majority of it it's always a vocal minority. Most people look and say, hey, like, this guy is one of the top coaches in the country. Look at what he's done. You know, he's been here for a while. These aren't Urban's recruits. This isn't, you know, Urban's team. He's been here. He's been to CFPs. He just hasn't gotten over that hump. I mean, he's won some big games. They beat Clemson. They've gotten down the wire. Heck, they were a 47-yard field goal away from beating Georgia last year. Like, they were right on the precipice of getting it done, so they're not that far. They just have to find a way to eventually push it over the top and find a way to get it done. And so I think a lot of people realize that. They want to beat Michigan. I think this the situation up there has probably taken a little bit of heat off of him, especially from last year, because 2 years ago, I don't think it mattered. Last year at home, it just seemed like things were going a bit too well. And a little bit in the second half, you know, they called it the meltdown, but all of a sudden it makes maybe a little more sense now. So I think that's taken some heat off of him. But and I, for one, I think Ryan is a heck of a football coach. And I always say, if you want to get rid of him, who are you going to hire? And then, like, they kind of stumble around him, like, exactly. Like, I've been around good coaches. I've been around bad coaches. Ryan is a really good football coach. Be glad that you have him.
You think Urban Meyer will have a return to college coaching? I know there's always like those rumors maybe Michigan State's going to make a run at him.
I don't think so. I know people have talked about it. There's been rumors, you know, they've offered him $100 million and all this, and heck, maybe they have. You know, I think he's very content now. You know, he tried at Jacksonville. I honestly think, Zach, it's harder to coach in college now than in the NFL, because at least in the NFL, guys are under contract. In college, like, hey, dude, you're yelling at me. I'm going to go dip and get in the portal. I'm out of here. Like, you can't be as firm. Like, you have to have a great relationship with people to be able to coach them hard. And so I think that I think he honestly saw that, took a step back, like, all right, I'm good. I'm having fun. Can watch my son-in-law coach at Ohio State and go see my grandkids. Like, and honestly, Zach, he's like a different person when he's not coaching. When he coaches, I mean, he turns into like full on like sociopath, locked in, singular focus. And then I saw him, a couple weeks ago. He's in Columbus, out like relaxing. It's like a different human being. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Last thing I'll ask you, just because I want your defensive mind with what you've watched this year in college football. Would you go Caleb Williams or Drake May if you had the number 1 overall pick?
I'm going to be honest, full disclosure. I haven't seen enough of Drake May this year. Last year, I thought he was pretty good, maybe a little more consistent. I know Caleb Williams can make some unbelievable plays. He does some reckless stuff. My only concern is with Caleb, is he developed too many bad habits this year. Because you watch him, like, he tries to be a hero on every play. And sometimes it works, but then he's also put himself in harm's way. He's fumbled the ball. He's thrown some picks. And so I think that you have to make sure that you can eliminate that when you bring him in, because that does not work in the NFL by any stretch.
Did you have any problem with him crying in the arms of his family like after the game? I didn't think that was a big deal, but some did.
Listen, I'm a very emotional player. I think the one thing I love about football is the level of emotion that it takes to be able to play it. He poured it out in that game. I mean, I don't know. I never ran up and talked to my parents during or after a game that I was playing in college. I'd wait for, they'd wait for me after the locker room, but I don't necessarily have a massive issue with that. Like, would you rather have a guy laugh and act like he doesn't care?
Right.
I mean,
imagine he was eating a hot dog on the sideline laughing. Yes. People be crushing him. You can't win. It's a good point.
Exactly. You go look at the hot dog situation, from, was it Sanchez?
Mark
Jets?
Sanchez.
Like I mean, like, it's like, well, do you want that? I mean, because you're going to criticize that as well. So you can't win for losing.
Bobby Carpenter, always great to catch up with you and talk a little football with you. You be well. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Zach. Thank you.
There you go. Bobby Carpenter joining us on CBS Sports Radio. Let's get the latest CBS Sports Radio update in with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
The Thursday night matchup isn't exactly one for the ages, with the 2-7 Bears hosting the 1-7 Panthers. Chicago owns Carolina's first-round pick, so the Bears could wind up with the top 2 picks overall. Justin Fields is out tonight again with a thumb injury, so Tyson Bagent makes his 4th straight start. He's noticed an improvement since being thrust into action.
I mean, nothing that I didn't know. We're playing against high-caliber NFL talent and players every week at every position, so if you're behind on a throw, while it could easily be an incompletion, these players have the talent in order, to make that a turnover.
The Bears have a few things to clean up this week after committing 5 turnovers on Sunday. Bryce Young, the top pick overall in last year's draft, has struggled in his rookie season with one of the worst quarterback ratings in the league. T. Higgins did not practice today for the Bengals. Jamar Chase was limited. Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers is healthy again and will start against TCU on Saturday. College basketball today, number 20 Baylor, an easy winner over John Brown by a score of 96-70. NBA action tonight, the Pacers host the Bucks, and the Hawks and Magic meet in Mexico City. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, it's Amy Lawrence. Be sure to listen to CBS Sports Radio at home. Just ask Alexa to play CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
Doesn't take much to make the Pro Bowl now. Tyler Huntley made it last year. Mac Jones has made a Pro Bowl because about 8 or 9 say no. So you know what? Rewind. Proper reaction. Because about 17 quarterbacks will say no and Will Levis will get in. Hey, Derek Carr, you want to go to the Pro Bowl? I got asked? Really? Oh, yeah, I don't feel like doing it. Lamar Jackson, you're a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. Do you want to go? No, I don't feel like it. All right, Deshaun Watson, you play like crap now. You want to go to Pro Bowl? Yeah, sure. Why? Like, Ryan Tannehill. Like, what are we doing, some of these quarterbacks?
This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
You know, I didn't get any updates, But we had 2 listeners that wrote in Moist Mike to be district attorney, I think, in Erie County. Did you get any formal notice, Samter, in regards to if you won this election process for district attorney of Erie County?
I was called by the powers that be in the Pennsylvania state government office. I was told that the race was too close to call, so they had to do a hand recount, which they did under infrared lighting. They actually had ballot-sniffing dogs as well to confirm the authenticity of the votes. And my vote count of, just over, 35,000 actually turned out to not be correct. I actually had 2 votes, and I lost a lot in the actual recount.
Do you accept the results of this election? Because I do not.
I met the dog, the ballot-sniffing dogs, and they are very good boys. And so I
give them a treat.
Yes, and they were very good dogs. And I trust their nose more than I trust those in charge of the count. So yes.
Did you see what former quarterback declared victory in the Lackawanna County Commissioner race?
I mean, of course, it has to be Donovan McNabb.
No. Matt McGloin. Former Penn State quarterback Matt McGloin declares victory in the Lackawanna County Commissioner race. Yes.
Raider great. Start a playoff game.
Some talk show hosts would call him McClutherness and not Matt McGloin if you go back to some of that audio. McClutherness, he's a good quarterback. McClutherness for the Raiders. So former Raider and Penn State quarterback. Look at the Raiders these days. They can't lose anything. They can't lose games against the Giants, and their former quarterbacks can't lose the Lackawanna County Commissioner race. So good job on Matt McGloin. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Look who's popped up. Ryan in Santa Barbara. Ryan, your 49ers have lost 3 in a row. What happened?
Happy Thursday from beautiful Santa Barbara, buddy. It's 75 degrees out. I just finished up 18, so I'm chilling at the 19th.
How'd you hit him?
On the computer. I did all right. I shot an 82,
that's more than all right. That's pretty damn good, Ryan.
Yeah. That's one of my other little hobbies, but it was a nice round with some buddies. Now hopping on the computer and, of course, enjoying the show, listening to you. And then, I just had to go back to your take at the start of the show. I love how you're focusing so much on my beautiful 49ers.
Yeah, I'm focusing on you, too. Where you been the last 2 weeks? Haven't heard from you. 49ers lose a few games, you go away. You have your tail in between your legs running away.
No.
You bougie golfer.
Busy,
Come on, you're golfing on a Thursday in the middle of the afternoon. You have time. Let's be real.
I got my hands in all kinds of things, and been busy.
Yeah, a lot of losing 49er tickets probably in the betting world these days.
But I just want to say, the Niners might lose maybe one more, and they're definitely going to kick the Jaguars and that bandana golden locks boy right in the junk. And then I will see the Ravens in the Super Bowl, and I will meet you in Vegas. Then after the win, I'll take you out for martinis and a steak dinner at one of Sinatra's favorite spots.
So you still think the 49ers are winning the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah.
I have to ask you, are you on any drugs because you've been golfing during the middle of the day?
Nah,
it's not very convincing right now.
Yeah.
You're not very convincing. I know you. You probably hit a pen when you're on the golf course and do a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
There's Ryan in Santa Barbara. I don't need to listen to any more of his 40-winers propaganda. After a 3-game losing streak, I was even defending the 49ers earlier. I was sitting here and saying that the 49ers are still going to be a force, and I just think they're going to come up short. But come on. They're only going to lose one more game the rest of the season? That's a joke. An absolute joke. And Ryan, he has the same energy all the time. Doesn't matter what happens on the field. The 49ers are still winning the Super Bowl in his mind. Let's go to John in South Carolina wants to chime in on Reggie Bush, J.J. McCarthy, and all these scandals in college athletics. John, what's happening?
Well, our pro buddy ex-pro basically said it. There's definitely an advantage if you were wondering about it. Hey, and even with Reggie Bush, I'm 70 and I've seen a lot of stuff and a lot of people I've worked with. if you've got like zero pressure on you, and if you got his mother a house, his siblings are now covered, he's got money in the bank and pocket, that could take a lot of pressure off you and might really affect your entire game.
So you think because Reggie Bush got money is why he was one of the more electrifying college football players ever?
Not all of it, but some part of it. Or, it's got to be an advantage if you have zero pressure on you.
You actually believe that, John?
I know it for a fact. I've seen enough people crack under the pressure. How many quarterbacks, how many baseball players, football players, when it comes to the big games, just can't do it? They have a great regular season, but boy, put them in the playoffs, and boy, they drop the ball 5 times.
So,
over,
John,
yada,
so
yada,
when someone now gets someone gets an NIL deal, which is allowed, what's the difference than what Reggie Bush was getting like 15 years ago or so?
Nothing, and that's the point. That's why they're all going to be bigger and better and faster and stronger because there's a whole lot less pressure on them. But another thing, we could debate that mental psychology baloney forever. I just know some people crack under the pressure and some people thrive under no pressure. But with Michigan, the real test is going to be, how they're going to play against the next couple of big boys they play. And the thing about taking them off the ballot, he shouldn't have taken them off the ballot. But if it turns out you're a team that because of your coaches cheating, you've got a running back that somehow knows every time because the coach knows where to point him in the right direction.
Do you think Michigan's gonna lose to Penn State this weekend? Just wondering.
I'd like to see it.
But do you think it's going to happen?
I'm hoping it does to prove the point that cheaters never prosper, only they just win a lot of money.
Did you bet against the Patriots a lot after Deflategate and Spygate? Just wondering.
The Patriots was all Brady. We don't want to start about who was the coach.
John, we're up against it, but come on. Like, what are we doing here? You're really going to call a show and say because Reggie Bush got money, that helped him on the football field? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Seriously. It's a stupid point. Now, I asked you, what do you think's going to happen between Michigan and Penn State this weekend? You talk about cracking under pressure. James Franklin's 3-16 up against top 10 teams during his time at Participation State University. Just letting you know that. And also, Manny Diaz, who's a good defensive coordinator, he's doing signals and he's making a joke out of this situation. Manny, you better hope your defense shows up because we know as a head coach, you stink. You're only a good defensive coordinator. Let's see if you can help Penn State this weekend.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rocking and rolling. Hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. We do have Week 10 of the NFL season that kicks off tonight, and what a doozy of a matchup we have for the Carolina Panthers going up against the Chicago Bears. But even if this Thursday night football game isn't something that is going to be one that's going to elicit a bunch of big national storylines, there, of course, is a great weekend of football upcoming. And one of the games that we have a keen eye on, and keeping a keen eye on, is the Texans at the Bengals. I don't know how many people before the start of the year thought this would be a big game, but it now is, with the way that C.J. Stroud's playing, and now the Bengals are back with Joe Burrow being fully healthy. So let's go out to the guest line and join a guy that's calling the game. He is the legendary CBS Westwood One and Turner Sports announcer. He, of course, is Kevin Harlan. Kevin, always great to hear your voice. How you been?
Hey, Zach, good to be on with you. Thanks for having me. And you're right. Before the season, we would have looked at Texans and Bengals and said, what in the world is that? How can that game even possibly, elicit any kind of response? But the way the Texans are playing at 4-4, and certainly the Bengals turn around, two good stories going into Sunday in Cincinnati.
And we know the last few years the Texans didn't have this good culture. And now you bring back one of their own in D'Amico Ryans. You get the quarterback, it looks like, right. And it's wild how quickly in the NFL things could turn around.
Well, and they've made some nice free agent acquisitions, too. They've added to the team. They've got some nice young receivers they're bringing along. And if you're drafting the right way, and of course time tells every story and every success or failure for a pick, but if you're drafting the right way, if you have those lean years, and they've certainly had some, it usually will catch up, and you'll begin to get some production. And I think that's exactly what we've seen. You know, the Stroud story is so interesting because it was really between him and Bryce Young as to who would go number one. And it was kind of a split room. Half would say, you know, go with the Alabama quarterback, and half would say go with the Ohio State quarterback. The one thing that kind of piques my interest a little bit is that as great as Ohio State has been, and they have been phenomenal in football, they have never really produced, in the modern age, a quarterback that has had a big impact on the NFL. And when Stroud a couple of weeks ago threw for over 300 yards, it was one of the first, if not the first time, an Ohio State quarterback had ever thrown for an NFL 300-yard game. And then he threw for over 400 last week and set yet another milestone. So he seems to be bucking the trend of what Ohio State has brought to the NFL in terms of the quarterback position, and he's really playing well. On the other hand, Bryce Young, as we know, is struggling at Carolina. Some interceptions last week, 2 pick sixes, and his learning continues under Frank Reich in Charlotte.
When you take a look at the Bengals, it feels like they are back, and a big reason because of that is their quarterback is healthy. When you look at Cincinnati, how dangerous of a team do you think they'll be the rest of the way?
Well, I think they've got the best receiving core from tip to tail. I mean, all their names are good and solid, and all could start on any team in the NFL. Their line has been, you know, a series of plugging somebody in here, signing this free agent there. They got Orlando Brown from Kansas City as their left tackle. Their line has not missed a single game all season, a single snap. Their defense, they've started the same defense at every position all season long. And so they've got great continuity. It's the basic core of last year's terrific team and what they've been putting together. But clearly everything revolves around Burrow. And like last summer when he went through the appendectomy and didn't play any preseason and got off to a real rugged start, this year hurt the calf, strained the calf muscle, did not play any preseason, was a minimal practice participant in the summer, slow start to the season. But just like last year, this year's team has gotten their traction, and they're beginning to turn the corner. And they've won 4 straight, and they're, you know, at the halfway point of the season. I think they feel good about being in the best division in football, but I think they're going to have a lot to say in the month of December and January when we begin to really nail down those final spots. They're as good as advertised, and they're every bit of what they've been over the last couple of years.
Kevin Harlan here with us. I'm glad you brought up the defense because I know what we do. A lot of times it's just talk about the coach, talk about the quarterback. Lou Anarumo doesn't get enough credit for the job he's done the last few years with the Bengals. And I know that the trend is now usually young offensive coordinators to hire. Heck, DeMeco Ryans, a young defensive coordinator, worked out well for the Texans. I think Anarumo should get a head coaching job this offseason.
Well, he's paid his dues for sure, Zach. You know, he's a lifer, and he's been at this trade a long time. But he was also the same defensive coordinator they had when they were not winning much, when Zach first got there to become the head coach. So he has grown with the team. Now, listen, they got Hendrickson as a free agent from the New Orleans Saints a couple years ago. Hubbard has developed into a terrific pass rusher, the former Buckeye. They've had 2 solid linebackers, and they've gotten young in the secondary after going maybe through a series of big names in the last part of their careers that maybe had lost a step. But now they've got some young, dynamic defensive backs, and really everything has probably gone pretty much as planned. I think they knew that with Burrow not playing any in the preseason and not participating, more importantly in the practices full bore, that they were going to be, you know, trying to find themselves, kind of groping a little bit in the dark for where they were going to be and trying to live up to all the hype. I mean, even more than Buffalo and perhaps as much, if not more than Kansas City, people said the Bengals are the team to watch. And this was, of course, even with all the the great revelry with Rodgers in New York with the Jets. So the Bengals have not let up. Their defense has been terrific. Offense is right where they need to be. They're a wonderful team.
How concerned are you, Kevin Harlan? Just wondering, because we talk about the Bengals who started slow and now are getting strong. The 49ers were as hot could be, and now they've lost 3 straight. Is there a concern level with the 49ers?
I think they need to get some defensive players healthy. That is always, I think, a key. Trent Williams has been banged up, their left tackle. That's always a concern. He's a premier player at that position. And I think that people have probably read the book from the cover to cover about Brock Purdy. Not that he's predictable, not that he has reached the level of his progress and his quarterback powers, but I think there's a better feel for his game, and I think they overload some of the position. They've missed some wide receiver help too with Samuel. He was with an injury, so there's a couple things at play here. The one thing I found about Kyle Shanahan, though, Zach, is I don't know if there's a better coach in the league at adjusting on the fly with what you've got to work with on that Sunday. And he has proven time and time again that even with the depleted lineup, losing starters to injury, and maybe, teams kind of getting a little, tip on how to play some of these better players, in particular the quarterback, who the book was wide open on, and they were still kind of learning about what he was doing. He always seems to make great adjustments. My feel is the 49ers are just the team we thought they were. Perhaps a dry spell right now, clearly with the losses. But I still think they're one of the powers in the NFC. I would not discount them at all. I think they also are a team that really knows when to shift gears. And they've done it in the past, and we're now just past the halfway point of the season. And this seems to be when they really thrive, the last part of the season, last half of the season. I would not take my eyes off of San Francisco.
Wrap it up with Kevin Harlan, who joins us right now, the legendary broadcaster, CBS, Westwood One, and Turner Sports. So on Monday, Denver and Buffalo, I know you do the Monday games on the radio. Buffalo's just been a funky team, and they just look like they're missing something this year. I know that they were everyone's pick last year. It did not go their way. But this has been two of an up-and-down team. Is their ceiling just being a good team this year, and they don't have a chance to be a great team when it's all said and done?
That's a great question, and I don't know that we're really going to have a definitive answer until we get into December, when we can see if they can iron out some of these problems. But they've not been consistent. They have had the quarterback continue to turn the ball over. I still don't think they're all that happy with their running game. When you're kind of in that position where you're always the team to be, we've seen this before now from them. This is they get the quick start and then they kind of level off, but they seem to be cooling off more than in the past. And it's kind of hard to figure out and a lot of people this week, I've noticed it, have started to talk about their head coach McDermott. Is he more of a, guy that can get a team to a certain level, but can he then push them to where they need to go? Well, they've come close. We know that. They've come close. But when you go back to that playoff loss last year in Buffalo when they hosted Cincinnati, I kind of feel like that might be the mark where we can kind of trace to where some of this is going right now. Whether that was just, same cast, same group, coming to camp again, have they lost that whatever it is that makes a special team a special team? Listen, Kansas City's not playing that well too, but they're finding a way to win, and the good teams always do. We've not seen the best of the Chiefs, but maybe a handful of quarters, if that much, this year. I've seen them twice, and they got beat both times. They got beat in Denver, and they got beat against Detroit. And they got a big game coming up against the Eagles in a couple weeks. And I know that in Kansas City there's some concern about maybe they're not what they once were. Well, they've had a loss of a lot of talent at wide receiver. The quarterback in Kansas City has never taken longer to throw, and Mahomes has never thrown for shorter distances than he is this year. So, there are a lot of these teams, Cincinnati struggles, Buffalo is struggling, Kansas City has not really, they've won, but they've done it in very unimpressive fashion. And I don't know if that's just the malaise of this time of the year, the team that actually is really kind of turning it on and playing with as much consistency as anybody is Baltimore. So while we've got all these teams that we kind of put in that group, Zach, of here are the 4 teams to watch in the AFC, I still think their best football is ahead of them. And as we turn the corner here halfway through the year, I really believe that all those teams are going to show their best. And that includes Buffalo and certainly the Bengals, who I think have begun a little bit early with their 4 consecutive wins.
Who do you think is the best story? What team do you think is the best story so far in the NFL this year, Kevin Harlan?
Best story is probably, well, Baltimore is hard to beat. I mean, they paid that quarterback, Lamar, all that money, and sometimes these quarterbacks have a hard time adjusting to everything that encompasses. But, boy, I think Baltimore has been a terrific story, and Jackson has been great. Certainly Miami got off to an incredible start, but they've had a hard time beating the teams that have winning records. And until they cross that threshold, I think people are going to wonder about, are the Dolphins legit?
Absolutely.
Or are they just a team that can really get at some of these teams that are 500 and below?
And how far do you think the Lions could take it this year, just wondering?
Well, I just saw them a couple weeks ago, Zach, and I think they're terrific. I think they've got all the components on defense. I think offensively they continue to show depth at running back. When Montgomery is healthy and back there with Jameer, I think they're really going to be even more potent than they are right now. They've got the receivers. They've got the offensive line. The quarterback is right in stride with everything that is going right with that team. His belief and his confidence are off the charts. We saw him, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, and they were terrific. I have no reason to think that Detroit won't be a prominent team in January.
Everyone gets a crappy game here and there as an announcer. Al Michaels tonight, Panthers and Bears. What do you think's going through his mind? And I'm sure you've been in that spot where it's like, wow, there's not really much to look at with these two teams, but you still got a job to do.
Well, he's such a pro and the idol of everybody that does what he does, play-by-play. My respect for him is boundless, and I would tell you that he'll handle it tonight like a pro, like he always does, and he'll look forward to next week because I think next Thursday they've got a good – and I don't know what it is, but I remember thinking, next Thursday, he's going to hit the jackpot, and I think it's a good game on Thursday. But he'll get through this, and you know what? For a team like the Colts, they're coming off a win at Carolina, and I think that I take that back. Carolina is coming off the loss to the Colts. They have got a lot going on right now. They got to resurrect that quarterback, and they've got to make sure that he is thinking the right way. And I think that with everything that's happening to Stroud down in Houston, he's probably facing as important a game as he's ever going to face in his pro career. Now it's young. And he's just beginning, but you know what? He's got to be feeling the pressure of what Stroud's doing with the Houston Texans. So I think he'll play well tonight. And Chicago has gone to a no-name quarterback.
Yeah, Tyson Bagent, right?
Out again. Yeah, so I mean, they're definitely going to be up, and it's the big national game for these two teams for the only time this year.
Yeah, and you're right. Cincinnati and Baltimore is your Thursday night game next week. So Al Michaels has a good game on the horizon. Before we let you run, Kevin Harlan, just going to the NBA. The biggest story in the regular season is Wembanyama. When you get ready for one of his games, just what goes through your mind as everyone's curious what he could be in year one?
Well, we saw him in preseason against Miami. We did a game down there for TNT, Zach, and he has an incredible handle for a guy that size. His footwork is terrific for a 19-year-old and a man with that length. He seems to be fearless. I think he's got great confidence in his physical stature in a physical league. He may look thin, but what he does with his workouts and his yoga and his stretching and everything else has given him great mental confidence, and that's carried over to the way that I think he feels he is thriving in the lane. Now, he struggled against the Knicks, and I get that. And he's a rookie. He's 19.
It's going to happen.
I mean, it's going to happen, absolutely. But I love his game. He's got the right voice in his head. He's got the nice, compatible parts around him. They're not playing him a ton of minutes, but just the right amount that he gets acclimated to the NBA game. He is a joy to watch, and him and Holmgren now coming in, both kind of the same size, same style. It's an interesting dynamic for that position to see if we're going to see maybe a bit of a change and not have every big shooting threes. Now, those two can, but they can certainly do most of their damage with their great length inside. And watching coaches use them against other defenses with a hard time to defend is going to be one of the more interesting things to see develop this season.
Last thing I'll ask you, Kevin Harlan. We know how important the Packers are to you. Long term, where's your confidence at with the combination of Matt LaFleur and also the quarterback Jordan Love?
Well, LaFleur, I have less question about. I think he's the right guy, but the quarterback, I think, is a gigantic question mark. I don't think there's any doubt. What we saw in preseason and what we start the regular year, he really was. I think down the road we're thinking this just might be the answer. But since game 2 or 3, it has really regressed. And he has been incredibly up and down. They did get the win against the Rams this past weekend, and they needed that badly. But I think individually on him, it's going to take most of this season to figure out. And I do not think that is an organization that will sit and say, let's give it one more year. I think they'll see enough this year with full-time starting and him being in the organization for the 3 previous years that this, in his 4th, that he needs to show things that they can really hang their hat on. And right now, there's not, I don't think, the things they see that they can hang their hat on and say, definitively, Jordan Love is our guy.
Kevin Harlan, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Zach. Thank you.
There he is, Kevin Harlan, always a class act, joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And I think that last comment that he made about Jordan Love is fascinating because I don't know about you, Samter. The way that I view Jordan Love is he was getting this year and then next year. Because if you force Rodgers out of town and then a year later after losing Rodgers, you're done with Love. Well, like if I was Gutekunst, naturally I'd just give him another year because the moment and I know they don't have a traditional ownership structure there, but the moment you move off of Jordan Love, you admit you get that wrong, and that's when everyone's going to be pointing the finger at you. So I never even thought about that, about the possibility of Jordan Love not being the starting quarterback next year for the Green Bay Packers. I've never even contemplated that because he's under contract through one more season. Yeah, because he's not an unrestricted free agent until 2025.
I mean, in today's NFL, nothing would surprise me, whether it's Dwayne Haskins with Washington or Josh Rosen with the Cardinals. Teams are getting rid of top-level early round Trey Lance with the 49ers. Top-level quarterbacks, they're getting 1 or 2 years to prove it, and if they can't do enough, and the thing with Jordan Love is what screwed him was he had to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. So the expectation was he had to step in right away and be great. All those growing pains were expected to be out of him because he was sitting and watching. That was the benefit of sitting back and watching Rodgers, was to be able to step right in, kind of like what Rodgers did, and he's not doing that. And so how much leash do you give him? I'd be surprised, but I guess in today's NFL, nothing shocks me with the quarterback anymore.
And look at that Trevor Lawrence draft class, for example. Trevor Lawrence is there. He stayed in Jacksonville. He's been pretty good. Zach Wilson is still playing for the Jets, but not by design.
He's fantastic.
Trey Lance is off the 49ers. He's with the Dallas Cowboys now. Justin Fields is going to be gone after this season because the Bears are going to have 2 top picks in the top 5.
And Mac Jones is going to get Bill Belichick fired.
Mac Jones is done after this season. Did you see the video, by the way, of Bill Belichick that was released today?
Allegedly, yes.
So I don't know if this was today. I'm going to assume that was some point in the summer in Nantucket. But it looked like shirtless, just looked like, allegedly, Bill Belichick quickly walking out of a house and tiptoeing in the early hours of the morning as if he just had some bam chicka wamp wamp time and was trying to leave as soon as possible. It used to be, we're on to Cincinnati for Bill Belichick. Now it's, we're on to the next girl's house. That's what it may have been with the way that he was looking, walking out of that home earlier today. Or maybe it was earlier this summer. Who knows? Dun-dun-dun. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We will take a break. When we come on back, we'll do some midseason awards. And also, do you actually believe that Justin Fields is done with the Bears after this year?
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio.
Matt LaFleur, through the first 8 weeks of the season, has really done nothing this season, and Matt LaFleur's quarterback, Jordan Love, has not impressed a lot. So far, if we just kind of have to judge at the halfway point, I don't see enough signs so far, but just based off what I see, that Jordan Love is the guy, and that's a direct reflection on the head coach in Matt LaFleur.
This is the Zach Gelb Show.
You can stream the NFL Must Have Won for free, sponsored by AutoZone. All season long, you can listen to Westwood Ones, every Westwood One broadcast of the NFL live on the NFL app by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports on the Odyssey app. Get in the zone, AutoZone. AutoZone's free battery testing and charging is available for free at your local AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Restrictions apply. So I want to do a little midseason NFL awards through the first 9 weeks of the season as we get ready to kick off Week 10 tonight with the Chicago Bears and the Carolina Panthers, where it's Tyson Bagent getting the start for the Bears going up against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. Midseason awards, MVP. Through the first 9 weeks of the season, I think it's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has this Ravens team a whole lot better than I thought they would be this year. The other people I considered, Tua and Tyreek, but the Dolphins have faded in their 3 biggest games of the season. You have 3 losses. You look around at the other potential names, like I do think you can make a case for either Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown if you wanted an Eagle, but I think it's similar like in Miami where they're going to split votes. If Joe Burrow continues to kick ass the rest of the way, you have a great case for him to be made for MVP because when he was hurt, they weren't good. Then he gets healthy. He has done a sensational job, but we know his importance to the organization. Mahomes, I don't think that offense has been good enough for him to win the MVP, and I think everything has to go perfect for Mahomes to win the MVP. And I go to Lamar Jackson. I think right now he is one of the more electrifying players in the sport, and also he's doing a lot with not the greatest pieces around him on the offensive side of the ball. Like, there is no doubt about it. Mark Andrews is a stud. But outside that, like, Zay Flowers is a good player, but he's a young player, he's a rookie. They don't have any other stars on the offensive side of the ball, so that's why I go Lamar.
And I'll just jump in real quick. In your head, because they're winning and we weren't expecting them to be this good, Lamar jumps out, but he has 9 touchdown passes through 9 games, and he's rushing for almost half the amount of yards per game that he usually does. He usually runs for like 64, 65 yards a game. He's averaging like 47 yards a game on the ground. So it's not like he's killing you on his feet like he normally does this year. And he's certainly not killing you through the air. He's completing like 70% of his passes, but he's got 9 touchdowns. So is he really the reason why the Ravens are winning? Or is he just doing enough? And like, for me, I look at Lamar. I love Lamar. I want him to win a second MVP. I just feel like it's a name that we're picking out.
It's more balanced. That was by the approach with Monken coming in. Was to make this. They wanted to throw the football more, and by doing that, you're getting more balance because the last few years it was run. So yeah, he's not on pace when he won unanimous MVP to get 36 passing touchdowns as he did, and also in that 2019 season he had 1,200 rushing yards. But right now he has 5 rushing touchdowns and 9 passing touchdowns, and most importantly, he's not really turned over the football. Only 3 interceptions as well. So I look at Lamar. The MVP is wide open right now. And through 9 weeks of the season, he is one of the more valuable players to his team because, like, you look at the offense. Yes, the defense is great. We all know that. But offensively, they still have not put a legitimate, no doubt about it, Sherlock #1 wide receiver around him.
I just look at it. His MVP year, he had 36 touchdown passes and 1,200 yards rushing. This year, he's on pace for 18 touchdown passes and 850 yards rushing. So, like, yes, I get it. He could still be the best candidate of a weak field. But if you compare his 2 MVP seasons, they're so night and day different. It's like he'll be doing half the yardage on the ground and half the touchdowns in the air. it just feels like an underwhelming year for what I expected of Lamar Jackson.
Now, one of the biggest games for him this year, like the biggest game for him, but one of the bigger games of the NFL where there's a lot of intrigue against Detroit. He fired off 3 passing touchdowns, was 21-27, 357 yards through the air, and he had 36 yards on the ground and also a rushing touchdown. So that was his big mega stat game of the year. Offensive player of the year. I'm going to say it's Tyreek Hill, and I don't really think this is up for debate. Early in the year, I picked Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey's having a phenomenal season. But Tyreek Hill, what he's been able to do so far, with already over 1,000 yards receiving, it's wild where when he said before the start of the year, I'm like, 2,000 yards receiving, I go, no way. Just because of how many weapons they have, and also with Jalen Waddle. And you have 2 1,000-yard guys. As long as he stays healthy, yeah, it's looking like Tyreek Hill's going to get to 2,000 yards. So Tyreek Hill's the offensive player of the year. I think the toughest one was defensive player of the year. Because it's really, I would say, a 2-man race right now. There's other names that you could consider. But the guys with the best resume is Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. And you can make a great case for Myles Garrett. You can make a great case for TJ Watt. And it's really tough to argue. But Browns fans will yell, there's too much of a Steeler bias, and Steelers fans yell, there's too much of a Myles Garrett push, and people don't know what they're talking about. I'm going with TJ Watt, and the reason why I'm going with TJ Watt is when it's so close, when the Browns did go up against the Steelers, TJ Watt was just a better player than what Myles Garrett did in that game. That was like the one game for Myles Garrett this year. But you really can't go wrong with either player, and both teams don't have good offenses. So if you want to here's an interesting question, Samter. Can the defensive player of the year this year in a, as you say, weak MVP field, if let's say the Steelers make the playoffs or the Browns make the playoffs, can you make a case for Myles Garrett or TJ Watt to win most valuable player?
It's so weird because usually it's the quarterback, and now we're talking about potential wide receivers winning it. Yeah, a defensive player could win it, but I feel like if there's any year where a quarterback doesn't win it, this year is
gotta be this year
where a wide receiver should get it,
which
as
has
opposed
never
to a
happened
defensive
before.
Right now, unless listen, if Myles Garrett gets like 23 sacks or TJ Watt breaks the records, fine, maybe they could be up for it. But outside of a historic defensive year, if it's not going to be a quarterback, it has to be Tyreek Hill or A.J. Brown.
All righty. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm going C.J. Stroud. I don't even think I need to say anything more than that. I know you could consider Puka Nacua, but when you have these awards and you have a quarterback who's off to a historical start for his career, it's going to diminish what Puka Nacua is doing, even though it's been sensational. So it's C.J. Stroud on the offensive side of the ball. Bijan Robinson should be in this conversation, but Arthur Smith doesn't know how to use Bijan Robinson, so he's not. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I was between Jalen Carter and Devin Witherspoon. I ended up going with Devin Witherspoon of the Seattle Seahawks. Coach of the Year, I'm going with Dan Campbell right now. But Coach of the Year, I thought was one of the more intriguing ones because you got some coaches here that are making this a really good conversation. John Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens. You could make a case that the Ravens are going to be good. No one thought they'd be 7-2. I know Doug Peterson last year had a really successful season, and Brian Daboll won Coach of the Year, but the Jaguars are 6-2. DeMeco Ryans with the Texans, if they make the playoffs, how does this guy not make Coach of the Year in the NFL? Nick Sirianni, he's 8-1, probably not going to get a lot of votes just because the Eagles were expected to be that good. But I had to go with Dan Campbell because I had a big concern about the Lions this year. And everyone was picking them to be that team. Everyone was picking them to make the playoffs and win that division. And through the first 9 weeks of the season, to be sitting there at 6-2 and to see what the culture Dan Campbell's brought that team and they've taken that next step, it's really impressive. And that's ultimately what determined it to me. Since it's newer, that's why I did go with Dan Campbell. Now, I want to have a conversation with Comeback Player of the Year because I never know how to vote, and I'm not a voter, but how people vote for Comeback Player of the Year. Like the year that Alex Smith won the award, we know what he overcame, and he nearly lost his leg in his life when you hear some of the story, but there were like other players that had a much better statistical season than Alex Smith, but when you nearly die or nearly lose your leg and then return to the field, that's overcoming this remarkable thing that was in front of you and a real scary real life thing where it maybe surpasses a great statistical performance when your numbers weren't that good. Damar Hamlin, the story is incredible. I remember being on the air that night, and I thought Damar Hamlin died on the football field. Like, no one wanted to say that, but that's what I thought happened, and that's what everyone else was thinking, but no one wanted to say that, nor should they. We all know the recovery of Damar Hamlin. It is incredible. It's remarkable. When I see him on the sideline, I still can't believe it. The only thing that I'll just ask is, does he need to play more? Like, just the fact that he is on the team and he was active for one game and he's been on the field, I would think he wins the award. But then, like, you look at the Tua storyline, where up until the Damar Hamlin story last year, the biggest story in the NFL was Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua's having this rock star season on the field, and up until now, he's not suffered another concussion. So I do wonder how voters will go about it and how much they will take into account on the individual performance on the field, because if that's what it comes down to, then Tua wins the award over Damar Hamlin. But with that being said, I would vote for Damar, and I think Damar is going to win the award because we're talking about someone that everyone thought died on the football field in that awful night in Cincinnati. And it's kind of just remarkable that not only is he still alive, but there's a decision to be made. Is he active or inactive for a game? So, Samter, how do you think voters will go about that? Because Tua has been better on the field. Clearly, it's not even close. But then we know the story of Damar Hamlin. And I kind of go back to the Alex Smith era. Alex Smith didn't have this great statistical season, but he won the award because of what he overcame as well, nearly losing his life and nearly losing his leg as well.
I mean, I think most voters are going to want to vote for Tua.
Really? Over Damar?
But I don't think that you can not give it to Damar.
Okay.
Like, you have to give it to Damar Hamlin. He's been one of the most inspirational stories that the NFL's ever seen. So I feel like it would be doing the sport an injustice for Damar Hamlin not to get it. But I hate saying this, I don't think he'd necessarily be the most deserving of the spirit of the award of who had the best season coming back. His perseverance, his inspiration, his ability to just survive is the inspiration, and that's a great thing. But it's an award for who came back and did the most after having an issue the year before, usually injury related. So I think he gets it, but I think probably Tua should get it.
And here is what the award says. It goes to a player who shows perseverance overcoming adversity in the form of not being in the NFL the previous year, a severe injury, or simple poor performance. So it's very vague in the definition of the award, where I could see what you're saying. Well, if you judge it by who's the better statistical player, it's Tua Tagovailoa. But when it comes down to perseverance and overcoming adversity in the form of not being in the NFL the previous year, a severe injury, or a simple poor performance, just Damar getting on the field and just him being alive too, as remember what the doctor said when he woke up? Did we win the game? Damar, you won life, remember, was the quote. And when the definition is so vague, I think most people will end up voting for Damar Hamlin.
And I think part of it is if he had one big tackle or an interception or even a fumble recovery where somebody else did all the work and he just jumped on the ball, something where you could be like Damar Hamlin, an announcer can say the name, we can have a highlight video of him doing something on the field. But for the most part, he's been active and we just haven't really seen him do anything yet.
He's been inactive. He's only played in one game this year, I think.
Right. And so even in that game that he played, he didn't really do anything. So I guess for me, I'd want to see him do something, to actually be active and make a play.
Yeah, well, him just being alive is
doing
something.
Trust me, I get it. And in the spirit of the award, he probably will get it. And he's very well deserving. When I think of the award, I think of a guy who came back and had a great season after those negative things the year before.
It is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a break. We'll come on back. Update time first. Here he is, the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, when the NFL drew up this primetime matchup, the idea must have been to promote two young and up-and-coming quarterbacks, but that is not the case tonight. The Bears host the Panthers with a combined 3 wins between the two teams. Justin Fields has taken a step back, and he's going to miss yet another game. And so Tyson Bagent starts for the 4th straight week. Bryce Young has struggled through his first 8 games with one of the worst quarterback ratings in the league and is coming off a 3-interception performance, the top pick overall, trying to keep his head up and said he does have a great support group.
I'm grateful for that, really, the whole unit. And it's a really good group of guys, good group of players, and, we all feed off each other, all pick each other up, and, we all want to make sure that we're there for each other. So, I think that's something that we take pride in, and I'm grateful for that as a unit.
The Bengals have some concerns at wide receiver with T. Higgins missing another practice today. Jamar Chase was limited. Texas will go with Quinn Ewers at quarterback Saturday against TCU, with Ewers being healthy again and healthy enough to get the starting nod. Basketball tonight, Bucks go for their 4th straight against Indiana, which has won back-to-back games. And the Hawks and Magic meet in Mexico City in the other game tonight. The Heat will be without Tyler Hero for the next couple of weeks due to a sprained ankle. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, it's Amy Lawrence. Be sure to listen to CBS Sports Radio at home. Just ask Alexa to play CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Today's memorable moment is sponsored by Prevagen. Prevagen is the most recommended memory support brand by pharmacists. In Week 6 of the 2020 season, the Bears beat the Panthers by a score of 23-16 to improve to 5-1. The Chicago defense terrorized Teddy Bridgewater, who completed just 16 of 29 passes for 216 yards. He was sacked 4 times and threw 2 interceptions. The Bears lead the all-time series 7-4, including 5 wins in their last 6 matchups. All righty, let's get to a little Zach Gelb Show PSA on this Thursday.
Warning. It's a Thursday. What do you have to say? It's the weekly Zach Gelb Show PSA.
Who's with me? Let's go! Come on! Hey!
All righty, do you guys know the name Scott Twardowski? Probably not. You should never know his name because he's an irrelevant referee who tried to become very relevant last night. And I can't stand this guy. I hate when I know an official's name. But last night, little Scott, let's call him, because he wanted to make a big impact on the game last night, he tossed Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the more well-liked, respected stars in the sport. Not only in the NBA, but in all of sports. Stayed in a small market, won 2 MVPs, won an NBA championship, won a finals MVP. And everyone is in that building last night to see Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. So in a game that was, I think it was 11 points, the spread was 12.5, so you could create your own Tim Donaghy speculation. Maybe Scott had a few shekels on the game. You could create that speculation. I would never do something like that. Giannis Antetokounmpo already had 1 technical foul. He throws down a thunderous slam, and he gets ejected from the game. Ejected because he did a little taunting and a little flexing. It was minor. That's what we want. We want our athletes to show emotion, to show personality, and to celebrate when they do something positive. And Scott, who's a no-fun douche, let's just call it what it is.
Wow.
Yeah, he's terrible. He's the most miserable person at the party. He throws out Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this guy has no cojones because Giannis Antetokounmpo runs right over and sits down and wants an explanation. Scott goes, get out of here, because he know he messed up. So here's my PSA. Referees, I'm not saying you let players walk over you, but no one paid to see you mess up a game. I know the Bucs ended up winning, but it's ridiculous that Scott ejected Giannis for doing basically nothing. It's inane, it's stupid, and it's idiotic, and I don't like Scott Twardowski, whatever you want to say his name. He's a loser.
Would it make you feel any better if you just didn't remember that Giannis already had a T and the second one was going to get him ejected?
What do you mean? I know he had a first technical already.
No. If the ref didn't realize it, that he gave him the T, I'm like, oops, crap, I forgot.
Oh,
he already
he
had
knows
a T.
it. He's a loser. He had an issue with his brother, too. Real quickly, Santa, go ahead. Your PSA.
All right, so mine is non-sports related. Now, there's two sides of this argument that everybody gets pissed about this certain driving situation. There's two different sides of it. There's either the guy who, when they're driving, doesn't signal when turning or changing lanes. Mm-hmm. Or there's the guy who forgets to turn their signal off after they change lanes or they make a turn. And so you sit on either one end or the other spectrum. You either hate the guy who intentionally doesn't use his signal, or you hate the oblivious guy that has the signal on and just doesn't realize he forgot to turn it off. And me and my brother argue about this day in and day out. Who's the bigger D-bag? Is it the guy who forgot to turn off the guy who forgot to turn off his signal, or the guy who didn't use his signal? And those are the two things. And I always argue, I hate the guy who doesn't signal, because that guy is just intentionally an a-hole.
Yeah, at least you signaled, so that's why I'll give you a little credit if you leave it on. Stu, real quickly, I know Santa left you a lot of time there.
No, mine is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, as a Laker fan, once again, he is injured. This time, a abductor/hip spasm. I've never heard of that in my life, an injury like that. He's always hurt. I feel like every time I'm watching the Lakers play, I feel like, oh no, he's hurt. He's going to be out for multiple weeks, and it's just a miserable experience.
So there you go. There's our Zach Gelb Show PSA. Santa turning into like Howard Stern there for a second with some of that language that we had. I don't know. I guess I kind of set the tone as well. So don't always follow the leader. It's the blind leading the blind here on CBS Sports Radio with yours truly. Bears are a 3.5-point favorite tonight. The Bears shouldn't be a 3.5-point favorite against any team. I'm not betting, but if I had to bet, I would plus the points here with the Carolina Panthers. I actually think the Panthers win the game outright. All righty, we out. Bye-bye. Peace.